Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the special open council meeting for August 31st. The meeting will be in two parts this afternoon. First one being from 3 o'clock till 6 p.m. We'll be working with agenda items 1 through 8. And after 6 p.m., we'll be going to agenda item 9 and any others that may arise. Any late items, Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Worship. I have 3 to point out. The first is 8B, rezoning application 355, and that's removed from the agenda. Under 9A, Colliery Dams, there's a delegation for Mr. Ron Stead. And also under 9A, just wanted to point out in the report and the recommendations where it refers to CopCan Contracted Limited, the name is actually CopCan Civil Limited. So it's to change that name to CopCan Civil Limited. Thank you, Worship. I understand Councillor Kipp had something.
Request for a late delegation on 9A, Mr. Leon Cake.
9A, delegation number 2, Mr. Leon Cake. Any others? Okay, I have one, and that is I would like that Council reconsider rezoning application RA 348 for 306 Hillcrest, 525 3rd, 305, 311, and 321 Watfield, and direct staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw for consideration of first and second reading at Council's meeting of September 14th, 2015. And I guess that would be under 6B, would it, Mr. Jackson?
You could replace that with the former rezoning, yes.
Thank you. Call for motion of the adoption of the agenda as amended. So thank you. Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Motion for the adoption of the minutes. It's moved. Seconded? Second. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Beswick. Seeing no discussion, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Presentations. The first one, 2016 to 2020 financial plan, and this is for the provision of parking services. Mr. Toby Seward, Acting General Manager of Community Development and Protected Services, and Mr. Rod Davidson, Manager of Parking Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to do a brief overview here and then turn it over to Rod and Wendy. As Council is aware, prior to March of 2013, we had Robbins contracting, providing contract service for parking. Council in March 2013 decided to bring parking in-house and provide it with our own service, own staff. So Rod and Wendy with the financial end will have a presentation on this, and we feel it's important to give some background on it as well as the financial, so we're going to run through this. One of the main reasons we want to give a little background on this is we will be coming back to Council in late September or early October seeking direction from Council if they wish to continue with the in-house service that we have now or consider going back to the contractor service that we previously had. And the reason why it's important to bring forward for you in the next short while is Council has to make a decision by the end of the year if they want to change the service we're providing, because right now we have MOU with the union about this process and bringing it in-house. So that's the quick background. The other point that's really important and certainly important to Council is the core review, and this may be one of the items that would be reviewed through core review. By the same token, we don't have time to delay it certainly into the new year, so that's why we'll be seeking direction from Council in the next 2 to 4 weeks in that regard. So I'll turn it over to Rod. He has a PowerPoint. Certainly we'll entertain questions throughout. That's the intent here, and as I say, Wendy Fulla, who works closely with Rod on the financial end of things, can talk about some of the finance slides as they come up. So Rod, I'll turn it over to you.
Your Worship, just before Mr. Davidson starts, regarding the core review and the potential to contract in or contract out before the deadline, There is, not meeting the deadline, council could choose a couple options as well. You could always, as part of the core review, decide to change the service delivery, just maybe have different costs associated with how you would do it after our abilities run out to do it before the deadline that Mr. Seward mentioned. The other option is to actually direct staff to discussion and negotiate with CUPE an extension to this, to the core review deadline as a way to extend the whole process. So those two options exist. I haven't had any discussions with the union, but I just wanted to be sure that you're aware that those also exist.
Thank you.
Council, thank you, Toby, for the introduction. We ran through a fair bit of these headings when Toby was introducing it to you. Each one of these headings we're going to delve into in a little bit of detail as we move ahead. I'll apologize now. I'll try to slow down. I'm not the best public speaker, perhaps, so if you want to jump in with questions at any time, I would appreciate that. That's what this is for, to answer any of the questions you may have as dealing to parking services security bylaw in the downtown area. The parking services background for members of council, we provide a number of options for the parking. There's our 250 some odd metered spaces. Those are the old single space meters that we've had out on the street for years and years and years. We have our 3 multi-level parkades downtown, and we have 7 other surface lots. In conjunction with that, we have in the downtown and Old City quarter approximately 2,000 timed spaces or residential parking spaces, or a mixture thereof. So that is a lot of the parking aspect of what we do. We also have taken on the Breckin Hill area above the ferry. That area, which was created as resident-only parking with some time restriction and some of it just 24-hour parking, was served by our municipal enforcement people prior to us coming on a reactionary basis. We now proactively enforce those areas. We just currently or recently changed the parking up on the Nob Hill area, where we instituted some resident-only parking with time restrictions, leaving some of the area open with unrestricted parking up to 24 hours to try to meet the needs of both the downtown users and the groups in and around Nob Hill. We've still been working on the hospital area for trying to develop a parking plan in and around the hospital area where our congestion is very, very high. We also have in the summertime issues down on Stewart Avenue and all along the waterfront between here and Breckin, as well as some issues still up at the university that we work on. As far as parking, that is a bird's eye view of it. As you can see on the map, the downtown areas that we currently enforce on a proactive basis, included with the Breckin and the other areas I mentioned. So before we took over in 2012 and prior to that, the parking administration and security was handled by several, or 2 in this case, different companies. Robbins Parking did the administration of the parking as well as the enforcement, and Footprint Security, through a contract with the DNBIA and the city, provided daytime and nighttime security patrols in the downtown. One of the reasons that we decided to bring the service using in-house staff is that we could amalgamate all these different services into one set, one group of individuals, and get a better service for that. So that happened back in 2012, May of 14. Council, at a council meeting, endorsed that motion, authorized staff to proceed with that. And of course, the objective, as I mentioned, combined parking enforcement, downtown security, bylaw enforcement, and in an ambassadorial role. When this was brought on and when I first came in 2012, it was very important that the service delivery was based on an ambassadorial role to deliver the message as kindly and gently as possible to the user groups. So we did that. We've had the integration of parking enforcement, the integration with bylaw enforcement, with the security services. We utilize the Downtown Community Policing and Services Office on Victoria Crescent as a center, as a hub, so to speak. We're able to effectively meet with the public there. The RCMP is in there on a daily basis. It serves as a hub. It's a place of refuge and has been used as that on several occasions for people that are in distress or feel that they're in distress in the downtown area. So we're trying through that to objectively meet all of the criteria that the rationale for bringing it in. And we're trying to do that in a manner that encourages voluntary compliance with the user groups. When we originally were looking at bringing this in, it was recognized that the number of hours, man hours out on the street was going to be reduced, and therefore there has been a reduction in ticketing that's come along with this. There's been a reduction in our fine revenue. Transversely, there's been a reduction in our bad debt write-off as well. This is one of the ambassadorial approach. We don't ticket every car that we find improperly parked. If the driver is present, we use our ambassadorial skills, for lack of a better term, and we found that it's worked very, very well. The number of complaints phoned into the city or communicated to us has been very, very little. So as we've touched on, we have an integration of services, the utilization of the downtown office. We have been developing, through myself, in-house expertise on developing the different parking and security aspects for the downtown. And we're trying to meet the objectives of all of our stakeholders, not necessarily just the city from an enforcement point of view. We're trying to meet the DNBIA, the Old City Quarter Organization, the Residents Organization, the hospital and the hospital's area associations. We're trying to develop a parking management strategy whereupon we can serve everybody to a certain degree. And we're in a lot of these cases, it's as if everybody's angry, then you're doing a good job. We're trying to make sure that everybody is at least, whereupon perhaps not totally satisfied, not against what we're trying to do either. So that sort of approach in engaging our stakeholders has been quite successful moving up till now. So when we brought this in, staff indicated that there was potential improvement in the delivery of downtown bylaw services, that the direct link with bylaw and RCMP downtown would provide an integrated response to the issues of the downtown. I'm not sure because I was only brought in 2012. Back in 2004, the downtown of Nanaimo was in crisis, I've been told. There was a fair bit of social discord down there with the Safer Nanaimo initiatives. The CPSO office was part of the process to try to reclaim that downtown. Moving parking services in there, the RCMP bike patrol, whereupon it doesn't work out of there, it's down there every day. They use it as a meeting area. Our RCMP foot patrol officer is in the office when they're working as well. They tend to come in at least 2 or 3 times a day. And they interact with our bylaw officers that work out of that office. So we think that what we're providing for the downtown and Old City Quarter area in a response time for bylaw offenses, for security, for quasi-criminal offenses, has shown a vast improvement at that time. And for whatever reasons, we are seeing creep back in the downtown core over the last 6 to 8 months. We've certainly seen an increase in street people. We've seen a huge increase in injectable drugs. Of course, with the fentanyl now in the news quite often, we're getting this pushback. We've seen an influx of street people over the last 3 months particularly, which tends to take more and more of our resources, which works well when we do an integrated model like this. We don't have to rely on pulling resources from elsewhere. So that's part of the bonus of having this type of system. So when this was brought in, there was a letter of understanding signed between CUPE, the local CUPE, and the city of Nanaimo, that a trial house of in-house administration and enforcement of parking, which is set to expire, as Toby mentioned, the end of this year, December 31st, 2015. So that agreement is something that council, of course, is going to have to make a decision on as we move forward. If there's any questions about that, we have our labor relations manager here to answer any questions that may come up because of that. So when we talk about the parking reserve, and the parking reserve was set up, and it's a transfer of any of the excess money once the costs of running the parking. Sorry? Oh, sorry. So it's the excess funds, what it costs us to run the parking, the bylaw enforcement downtown, the security services downtown during the day. Anything that's left over goes into the parking fund. And we pay for, in this case, we have an annual payment of $185,758 to pay for the construction of the Harborfront Parkade that will run until 2021, I believe. So the idea being is that parking will make enough money to cover its own costs, to contribute to the parking fund, to pay that, and hopefully grow the fund. So parking projects, 2015-2019, are funded by three main sources. We use the parking reserve, we use the city asset management reserve, and the sustainability reserve. Primarily, the projects that we are planning are infrastructure repair and maintenance. We've been last year, this year, and in 2 years from now, we'll be doing extensive projects in the Bastion Parkade. We have current projects in the other two parkades as well. So we're trying to, between those three, we hope to be able to fund those projects. There is also in the financial plan increased parking equipment for the downtown. There was a parking presentation given to council about a year ago now, recommending that we convert the free 2-hour on-street parking in the downtown to pay parking. Because of working with our stakeholders on that project, council agreed that free parking should be supplied on weekends and evenings at the Bastion Parkade and on-street meters as part of an agreement to put the pay parking in. That was, in our last year's budget presentation, that was put off till next year again for reconsideration. So there was a reduction in our income from this year, I should say. Because of that, we've given away the parking in anticipation of putting more parking in, but we'll move ahead with that. So as of March 1st, 2013, we moved ahead. We had already hired myself as a parking manager and assistant manager of bylaw services. We hired 3 new bylaw enforcement officers to enforce the parking bylaw as well as the other regulatory bylaws in the downtown and conduct security patrols. We hired 1 full-time parking administrative clerk, and we took 1 position from the bylaw department and transferred it to the parking services department. So our parking downtown is a total, we have 6 full-time employees working, 5 of them working out of the downtown office located on Victoria, and myself working upstairs out of the Service and Resource Center. So significant changes. Right now, we have direct control over all of our parking and security services. We don't have to contact an outside contractor. If we see issues, we can react to it immediately. If there's problems anywhere in the downtown, we can react to it immediately. It's a matter of we get a complaint phone and we can get there. We'll always have eyes on the street 7 days a week from 7 o'clock in the morning until 5:30 at night every day. And because of the way we have scheduled it, we do multiple tasks. We don't just go out and write parking tickets and ignore security. We don't just go out and do security patrols and ignore the parking aspects. The downtown in 2014, they answered 587 calls for service for bylaw enforcement, non-parking related. These would be drug squats. These would be simple things like people passed out in the parkades. They would be property cleanups. It would be the full slate of regulatory bylaws that we answered. So, like I said, in 2014, it was 587. That's approximately what 2 bylaw officers doing just bylaw enforcement work would do in a year. So the in-house security patrols, Because they're out there the 7 days a week, we're able to sweep all of the city facilities early in the morning, deal with those people that have tried to take up a boat overnight in the parkades or out on the lawn at City Hall if it's a nice summer night or wherever they happen to be. We do that constantly. We do that every day. We patrol the waterfront, obviously, and we get down on the port. We have user agreements with the Port Authority to enforce bylaws down there. Having uniformed bylaw officers with peace officer status provides them with the full authority to not only enforce all of our bylaws, but to assist the RCMP if there's criminal code matters happening, or that could be whether it's drunk in public, whether it's the use of drugs in public, any of those whereupon a security service would only be able to report that to the RCMP. They have no authority to do anything but to report. We have limited authority. We can enforce our bylaws. We can move ahead. And having the same people downtown has been able, we've now been able to, we know who the players are downtown. We know who the people on the street are. We have extended that ambassadorial approach for everybody, not just the tourists, not just the business people. We know most of the people who live on the streets downtown on a first name basis. That allows us that level of familiarity that we can deal with most of the issues that they may bring forward in a very time-sensitive matter without having to involve the RCMP. They would rather not have to respond to that. They would, but they have probably other things to do than to deal with somebody who's upset downtown because whatever trivial matter might have happened in the plaza or in the park or wherever. So that's been very successful. We also brought in, when we started, we changed our ticketing system for not only the parking, but we changed it for the entire bylaw department. We went to what's called a bylaw offense notice and utilized a bylaw adjudication system. This system allowed us to take all of our bylaw offenses out of the provincial court and have them heard by a provincially appointed adjudicator at these adjudication systems. They're actually held up at the Service and Resource Center in the boardroom. What it does is it legitimatized the parking tickets because they were now being heard by an independent authority, not being heard by the issuing power that was happening when we were using a contractor, and therefore it all became collectible debt if we ever wanted to move in that direction. The immediate bonus of doing that was we were spending between $1,000 and $1,200 a month on legal counsel to prosecute our bylaw tickets in the provincial court every month. And so far this year, we've spent $500 on adjudication for the whole year. And with us, myself, going to Duncan, going to Parksville, and to Fino, what we've done is all of those municipalities have also joined the bylaw adjudication system. They use our adjudication hearing dates to have their tickets heard, and they pay a proportionate amount of however much time they use with the court. So if we hear 30 tickets and Parksville puts in a third of the tickets, if they bring 10, they would pay a third of the cost of running the court for that day. So we've cut our costs down appreciably to do the tickets. And with the way the bylaw offense notice and adjudication system works is we do a pre-screening. We have one of our employees do a screening report, and about 92% of the time the people voluntarily pay rather than go forward. In other words, we won't take tickets forward that we don't think we're going to win, and we explain that to the people beforehand and give them all of our evidence, and most of the time they agree with us at the end. And they may not like it, but they enjoy being able to pay a discounted amount and not going to court. And that is part of the adjudication system as well, as we're allowed to, by provincial act, reduce fines by 25% or increase fines by 25%, depending on when they're paid or not paid. So this is a simplistic picture of how we operate in the downtown, who we interact with, and this is our stakeholders. This is who we deal with on a daily basis or certainly a weekly basis, how we run our parking services / bylaw / security in the downtown area. Everything from our social planner planning to put his pianos downtown for the enjoyment of all to the RCMP, as I've touched on, our municipal enforcement, where we have we both of us now do enforcement actions, whether it's out by the university, whether it's out by the ferry terminals or anywhere in between. We act together with them. Parks, we tend to go up to Devon Park, and we have to deal with the people sleeping in the park, especially during the dry sessions that we had, to try to keep them from burning the parks down accidentally, or working with Public Works. All of these different areas interact with the group that we have out of the downtown, as well as the bylaw department, but specifically in the downtown, these are the groups that we interact with, and we'll call these our stakeholder group. So in our first full year, 2014, as you can see here, we had total operating revenues of $1,489,525. You can read it. Anyway, we had a net operating surplus at the end of the year of 2014 of $276,983. We paid our debt. We were able to put a further $91,000 into the parking reserve. As 2014 worked its way through, and I was able to spend a little bit of time, and we reviewed the parking management strategy for the downtown, and we brought to council at that time a report suggesting that we increase parking rates that they hadn't been looked at for a number of years, that we'd fallen behind. And that was presented to council, and council agreed, and we raised the parking rates in late 2014. So 2015 is actually the first full year that we'll have under the new rate system. But 2014, we came out with, like as I said, a surplus of almost $277,000, and we were able to contribute $91,000 and change to the parking reserve after our operating and debt repayment. So as I expected, as I just explained, the operating revenues. The other thing that we've found is, since we took over, we had a vested interest to make sure that our off-street parking facilities were utilized to their fullest extent. And therefore, we made a real push. A lot of the surface lots, there'd been an artificial limit of about 50% of occupancy put on it by our contractors, leaving a number of spaces for people that just wanted to drop in and drop out. We've changed that. We're now running anywhere from 70 to 85% capacity for monthly parkers in our surface lots. We've changed the parking schedule in the Bastion Parkade. We've removed half of the hourly parking on the top deck and made that monthly parking, trying to get utilization of those spaces. With new businesses moving into the downtown, such as Webmasters, we've seen the capacity of the Bastion go up. I believe it's currently about 78% capacity with monthly passes. And then we still have, obviously, capacity for the drop-in people or short-term parkers. The Harbourfront Parkade is running very close to capacity. When you factor in the requirements of the hotel, at any particular time, we would want to have at least 50 spaces for them. So really the only facility that is not running close to capacity, unfortunately, is the conference center. And when we have an event in the downtown, it is filled as well. In fact, when we have any kind of event in the downtown, all of our parking is filled. And we're having to push people into perhaps Maffeo Sutton Park, or they have to go to the private lots to try to park, especially through June and December. June is when the universities and the schools all graduate. They hold their events here. There literally isn't a parking spot to be found. If the Port Theatre has an event at night, there literally isn't a parking spot to be found. So at times, we're underutilized. During the regular day, there's usually parking to be found in the one parkade, not so much in the other ones now. So we've been working very diligently to try to direct people off the streets into our off-street parking facilities. It's also with our free evenings and weekends, as I touched on earlier. That, of course, had a detrimental effect, if you want to say, on the revenue aspect. Because it's something new, it's very hard to compare figures to prior years. We don't have anything to compare it against. Anecdotally, we would look at it and we would say that it's being very well used. There seems to be lots of traffic in the downtown on the weekends. So we'll, of course, we'll be discussing that with the DNBIA to see if their facts and figures would support continuing that and bringing another report to council to consider that. Whereupon our fine revenue had a significant decrease through the years, and as I mentioned, our bad debt has also had a significant decrease, and that is because we are not having as many hours dedicated to parking enforcement. When we had Robbins doing the parking contracting, and they would have 3 full-time people out there, all they would do was write parking tickets. They didn't have to worry about anything else, and therefore they wrote tickets, and they did exactly what we asked them to do. It's nothing against the contractor, but when you have full-time parking contractors writing full-time parking tickets, you tend to write a lot of tickets, and the dissatisfaction with the service tends to go up. So the system that we've developed, whereupon we certainly were all over anything that has safety on it, and we still write a fair number, 7,000 to 8,000 tickets a year, which is a significant drop of Robbins, which would write 12 to 14,000 tickets a year. It was, the fine revenue has just naturally dropped. Now, it hasn't dropped as much as it could have, because when we went to the bylaw offense notice, the discount also was less when our contractor had it. I believe it was a 50% discount if you paid it within a certain length of time. Ours is 25% discount. So in 2015, this year, we got our license plate recognition vehicle up and running. It's currently running. We unfortunately hit small roadblock or a bump in the road, shall we say, with the original supplier of the equipment, and technology went bankrupt about 3 weeks after we got the equipment installed. So we have worked with other providers, shall we say, and through it all, at the end of the day, we've signed a new agreement with our new provider that is about half what it was costing us with our original contract provider. So at the end of the day, we got set back a month or two, but we're saving about $600 a month on the monthly fees for running this vehicle. So that worked out well in the end. I'm sorry, sir? Absolutely. I take credit for everything. So as the LPR, the license plate recognition vehicle, has allowed us to do proactive patrols over a much greater area. It's allowed us to patrol the entire Old City quarter. It's allowed us to expand out into the Nob Hill area. It's allowed us to proactively patrol that Breckin Hill area that I talked about without increasing manpower. One person in that car could do what 2 or 3 people would do on foot, and probably at the end of the day do it much better, much more concise, with all of the photographs that it takes. We know when somebody is in violation. The pictures are right there in the car, and we're able to use that successfully if we were to go to court or adjudication with it. And what it does is it gives us consistent and fair coverage of all of the areas where we have restricted areas. In other words, if it's a time-restricted area, the anticipation is we will get through it on a daily basis now, not once a week or not once a month or not when you complain about it, but this gives us the ability to get through all of these areas on a consistent basis without having the problem of enforcing manpower to do that extra area. So 2015, you can see here that we've got actuals to the end of July. Using those numbers, we've had Wendy and the good folks in finance work through a projection for the year. The one number that's missing on that is in the actuals to July, which was the debt repayment. As of the end of July, we had paid $108,359. Unfortunately, we missed that. So what this says is, with the rate changes that we've instituted this year, that at the end of the year, we're anticipating a net operating service of $450,639. And at the end of the year, we're anticipating a transfer to the parking reserve fund of $264,881. This is about $12,000 more than 2012, the last full year that a contractor ran the parking services. So this is where we're thinking that realistically we should end up at the end of the year. The next, this graph is just to show. Yes.
Yep, question for you, Councillor Brennan.
That 264,800.
Yep.
How much higher is that than 2012?
We are anticipating it's about $12,000 more than 2012.
Thanks.
And just add a supplement to that. So that, when did our new parking rates come into effect?
Our new parking rates came into effect late last year. So it would be November, December when they first came into effect.
Thank you.
We would have seen a very small increase in the very end of last year. Unfortunately, with the really, really old equipment that we had in the parking meters, it took a significantly longer length of time to reprogram them than we'd anticipated. So it took, instead of about 2 weeks, it took about 2 months to get it all done.
Thank you.
So this is just a graph showing what we just talked about, the 2012 actuals compared to the 2015 projected with the actuals in between. You can see by the graph that the 2015 and the 2012, the surplus amounts now very close. We're a little bit up this year, but we do have, of course, our expenses have gone up through a variety of reasons. Our labor rates are higher than in 2012 when we weren't paying fair wage. This is us paying our union rates. And all of our other costs running the parkades have gone up, the electricity, the water. So we've had a slight creep, in the expenditures. However, the revenue has gone up as well. And we're, like I said, we're projecting a healthy contribution to the parking reserve fund this year. So as we mentioned, the parking services trial period will expire at the end of this year. The letter of understanding is set to expire and the items to be considered. So we did transfer one full-time position from regulatory services. That would be transferred back to the regulatory services, $78,000. Right now we have full-time security in the downtown and the Old City Quarter, depending on how we want to write a new contract. We may see a reduction in service for the security. Certainly we would see a reduction in the response because it would be an observe and report instead of observe and react. So once again, and our parking enforcement administration would no longer be an in-house function. We would no longer have control of our services. It would be through a contractor. We do have a contract that's not set to expire until 2018 for 19 multi-space pay machines as well as a enforcement citation system. If we were looking at wanting to withdraw this service, we would have to negotiate with the supplier of those contracts to either buy them out or negotiate a settlement with them. And you would lose the services of a dedicated parking manager to work on these areas that are out of the downtown core, to work with all of the different areas of the city, to work at the hospital or those other areas, and somebody who would actually spend a full time not only doing parking, not the security, but the animal control contract, number of other, as well as aiding the bylaw department as the assistant manager. When we worked through the two, we went and we based some numbers on rough estimates provided by some contractors. They're not necessarily defendable numbers, but they were numbers that were provided. And as we work through it, there may be a net estimated savings of contracting the service back out of just over $60,000 a year. In order to get proper numbers, we would need direction from council to go for a request for quote or a request for proposal. This does not take into account any of the labor issues that might arise from doing this. I believe there was a grievance that was dropped or put on hold when we brought it in-house that the union has I believe, the ability to reinitiate that grievance over wages and whatever. Anyway, that's as a rough estimate, it's about a $60,000 savings if we wanted to contract the service back out. So this is where we think we should be
Bill.
going with the parking.
Bill.
Oh, pardon me.
Oh, sorry.
Councilor Brennan.
Thank you. The parking services in-house model or external contractor model, that page there. The external contractor, those rates that you've cited here, are they consistent with our fair wage policy?
What we used was the level 1 pay to put in. We did not, at this point, discuss that with the union, or rather we plugged in the level 1 of $23.97? $23.97 an hour.
Okay.
And we asked contractor to give us an idea of what the charge out would be if they had to pay their people that much. This did not, this would include an administrative fee, but it wouldn't give us a full-time parking administrator with a contracted company. They would obviously do other work for the other company as well.
Thank you.
So it's a number just to come up with a number.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Keck.
Thank you. Just on that page, the internal charges, under the in-house model are 167.7. And the external, what are those our people internal on their external contractor too?
No, the internal charges, so in the in-house model, that includes the license plate recognition vehicle. There's a fleet charge for that. It's computer charges for the computers for the staff. And there is also a 4% admin fee that we charge to cover the finance department's costs, because we got payroll, different accounting entries, you know, the different financial support we provide to parking. And then in the external model, you see a bit of a drop, because the only thing that would change is the computer charges. You don't have staff, you don't need computers anymore, but we would still have, at this point, the license plate recognition vehicle.
So, okay, so yeah, that's our administration cost.
That's our administration cost.
Including the 4% for admin.
Including the 4%, and in the previous model in 2012, we've always charged that 4%.
Is that typical across the organization, if I may ask, or in Public Works or wherever you're, is that typical, 4% admin, or is that just this department?
It's only in this department, but there is, Deb probably can speak to this better, there is overhead rate, a charge out that we do, but Deb can probably.
Okay, thank you. A follow-up on that, does anywhere in this contract, or does the parking, the provision of parking, does that supply the downtown police office? Who pays for that? And
The
use of
downtown
that?
police office is a function of the bylaw department. So the bylaw department budget covers the cost of running that office.
And that's not in this budget for you?
No.
You just use the space?
Yes.
You don't pay for it?
The bylaw budget pays for it.
No, I'm just kidding. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question concerning the fair wage. How many hours were budgeted in under the supply and service contracts? Any idea?
We do.
I knew she'd have it. I think at 2397, we're pretty light for a full-fledged bylaw enforcement officer.
We, when we budgeted this out, we weren't budgeting for full-fledged bylaw enforcement officers. We were budgeting it out as a parking enforcement officer that would only do parking, and we would budget it out for security officers that would only do security. If we were looking at reproducing the model that we currently are running, where they would do a multitude of tasks, we would probably be paying wages that would be very similar to what we're paying now.
Are parking enforcement officers not bylaw enforcement officers according to our collective agreement?
Yes, they are. But
So
if we
then, are they
contract,
all not the same wage?
yes. I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about the contracted price.
But if we're considering you have one category for a bylaw enforcement officer, be it somebody who, an animal control officer, or a parking officer, all the same wage.
That, and of course, that would be a
I think we're about
negotiation.
$8 shy is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So
If we got the hours
we have the hours.
on calculation,
Yeah, maybe I can just jump in here for a second. So in the external contractor model, we have budgeted for 8,760 hours of parking enforcement per year, and we have budgeted for daytime security, and that came to 5,840 hours.
so 8760 times $8 would be easily, well, almost $7,000. 70,000, pardon me.
I'm sorry.
Well, did we not end up in a wee bit of a tussle concerning the rate of pay? And was there not a settlement with respect to rate of pay on the animal control officers? That caused
Not in
rise
my
to a
time with the city. The animal control officers have always been paid as bylaw enforcement officers since, certainly I've been here since 2012.
I don't think so.
Mr. Swaby?
So, Your Worship, if I understand the question, yes, we were advised that we needed to change the rate of pay to reflect contract wages as well, and that has been done. So that's reflected in most situations where the union has identified that there's an issue related to the collective agreement.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Hong?
Thank you. Just a question. How does this external contractor model compare to, say, what Victoria's commissionaires are doing? with their wages and stuff like that?
Of course, Victoria is just moving to an in-house service, or they have moved to an in-house service. Their commissionaires are single tasked to just rate parking tickets. And I believe that they came in $19, $20 an hour, somewhere in that wage scale. But once again, they don't do bylaw enforcement and they don't do security. They still have their security services on staff down there. And they still have separate bylaw enforcement for the downtown. So they've kept 3 distinct classes of, and pay for 3 different sets of people to walk the same streets.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I was going to hold my questions till the end, but under the in-house model, the services and supply contracts, $538,000. Could you help me better understand what's included in the services and supply contracts, please?
So under the in-house model, we have the 3 contracts that we have for the citation system, the supply of the parking meters that Rod spoke of, sorry, and the cash collection. So that's about a $250,000 contract per year. Then we also have nighttime security. We have the footprints. We have cleaning. And then that also includes contracts for the repair and maintenance of the parkades.
And sorry.
And security at the Port Nanaimo Center. So it's made up of quite a combination of different things. The largest portion being the 3 contracts that we have that total approximately $250,000.
So collecting the fees is one of those contracts
Collecting the coins, yeah,
out of the meter heads,
correct.
and
The citation system, so the handheld system that the patrollers use. And then we are also paying for the parking meters.
the maintenance of the parking meters.
No, the actual, we lease the 19 pay and display machines. We don't own them, we lease them.
Okay. So we lease the tickets bidder. So this is sort of a condensed version of what the budget page would look like for revenues and expenditures and line items. Can you steer me to where I would find that in our, what pages I would find that in our budget, please? Like, will I find it all under
Your worship,
parking and bylaw, or will I find, is there somewhere else that I would have to go look
Yes,
at
there's multiple
different
places. We
departments
can
to
provide
find
those for
this?
you. We'll provide those for your worship.
It's in the financial plan on the city website. Provided.
It's on the financial plan on the city website. However, if you need further detail, Councillor Bestwick, we can certainly get that to you.
But your worship, to answer Councillor Bestwick's question, it's contained in multiple places within the bylaw, and we'll provide you with the locations of those.
Thank you. Because I'm getting consolidated information, but without the minutia or the detail
Well,
necessarily.
your worship, you're getting staff's consolidated version of the costs associated with the service delivery.
Yeah, of parking.
Correct.
And bylaw and cleaning. And so when I see services and supply contracts, then that
Maybe I'm not
suggests-
sure. Maybe I'm not actually sure what you're asking then.
No, it's all right.
Did you want the services contract
I can
broken
come down
down?
and see Deborah or whomever. I'll just set an appointment up and come down and find it. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I'm a little confused about the wages and benefits line, why the difference is, and is that because under service and supply contracts, wages are included there for the external?
That's correct. The 8,947 is a worker out of City Yards that comes in and does repairs to the on-street single-space meters. If a car hits the post and has to be replaced or needs a meter needs to be repaired, we have a public works person come in to do that.
Okay.
And the contractor's wages and benefits would be under that 925 number.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot of different services that you're talking about when you're talking about the ambassadorial services, the one-on-one, the safety, there's a lot of different things happening in our in-house model. Is this a real comparing apples to apples, or is there quite a bit of difference in terms of the services that are offered in-house versus external?
What we would anticipate is that we're offering a higher level of service, having a combined service by the in-house. Once you fragment it out into different contractors that are single-driven, in other words, if they're being paid to write parking tickets, that's generally what they'll do, is they'll write parking tickets.
Right.
Your Worship, how I remember it, though, the actual contracts that we had were separated out into, we had security contracts for the downtown and for City Hall. We had parking contract with Robbins. We didn't actually contract anyone for ambassadorial. That was usually done probably the same way that some of it's done now through volunteers, but that was an enhanced service that was also added to the new role.
Thank you.
Sorry, and the other is that that these officers generally provide a better level of service. Mr. Davidson could probably articulate this better than me for the RCMP in terms of crime in the downtown and helping out in that regard.
So that kind of answers my question then. We're not really comparing the same thing.
Well, we're comparing it as best we could in terms of expenditures. We think it's a higher service level by having it in-house. We're very happy with it. But we also think that there's some financial reasons to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Well, if there's only a couple of sheets left, I'd leave my questions till the end.
Good. Carry on, Mr. Davidson.
So, looking into the future, we're still working on a hospital residential area parking plan to try to alleviate some of the on-street congestion in and around the hospital that's been dragging on for quite some time. The Brecken Hill Ferry Terminal area has been largely solved, I think, with the implementation of the license plate recognition vehicle. It seems that the hop spots were, I'm sure the one gentleman up there that phones me may disagree at times, but we've had very few complaints this year about people leaving their cars and getting on the ferry, so we're quite happy with that. We're also moving ahead with converting our multi-space parkades here to a pay-by-plate system so that we can utilize the license plate recognition vehicle in there. We're working with the Coast Hotel to give them a computer portal where their guests would register their plates of their vehicles when they're registering for the hotel, so they don't have to go back and forth. That'll be a cost saving for the city as well as the hotel. We are looking at upgrading certain technology levels. We're looking at, for the parkades, a pay-as-you-leave instead of pay-as-when you get there. We're seeing if we can implement that without having to staff those stations. That would be the one thing that we're looking at, and I'll be bringing that up at our, I have a meeting in Vancouver here later this year that I'll be bringing it up with some of the suppliers on how we can go ahead and do that. We're further integrating our provincial adjudication system. I'm co-chair of a provincial organization that's working on improving that, along with a gentleman from the Justice Ministry. We'll be holding some workshops with the rest of the municipalities in the province to try to improve that system. There has been some more municipalities in the area that have expressed interest in joining in with us to cut our costs further, so we're hoping that we can move ahead with that and keep the cost down and provide a better service for the people.
Did you have anything, Councillor Pratt?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So just in closing, we're anticipating bringing a formal report before council, as it says, either late September, early October, with all of this information and perhaps a little bit more detail for council to give us direction on whether we want to continue with this as an in-house service or whether we should explore an external service. And we'll at that time, we'll be seeking council's direction.
Mr. Seward.
So, Your Worship, that concludes the report, but that's what we wanted to bring up now because you will have a number of questions from this, but between now and when we bring the report forward, certainly we'd like to hear any questions you have that we can provide clarification because, as noted by some of the council members, it's trying to compare two different service delivery models that are quite a bit different. And you as councillors would be hearing it from the public of potentially if they feel the system we have in place is better now or not. But probably most importantly is how people feel in the downtown about having bylaw officers as ambassadors down there. So we'll be bringing that forward, as I say, in the next approximately 4 weeks. But please, both now and as other questions come up, please send them through to Mr. Davidson, and we'll attempt to either include them in a report or respond to you directly. So certainly we're open for questions as you see fit.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. I appreciate the information. It's good to get it, and it's timely. The expansion of the parking services, and it's interesting because of my history, the commissioners used to do it, then Mr. Bob Borum came on scene and created parking, barking bylaws and business license for revenue. And it's become a huge revenue, but it's somewhat cost effective in its revenue and spending. With the adjudication you talked about and the ability, you said that there was $500 our cost this year or something?
What it costs us is $504 to run a full session of adjudication hearings. And because of the success of what we call our screening process, it's taken us up until last week to get 26 cases, which would fill a day. Between Tofino, Parksville, Nanaimo, and Duncan, it took us a little over 8 months to get that many. Most of the cases are solved at the screening officer status.
So and that's my question on that. The staff prep time, you says the staff prepares the statements, but it's not as costly as going through a lawyer or that.
It's not, and we were having to do the same workload when we had a lawyer. We were spending an extra $1,000 to $1,200 to have the lawyer come to act as our prosecutor in court.
Well, that's been a savings. And people from Tofino have to come to Nanaimo to fight their...
The way the adjudication system works is you don't have to show up in person. You can show up either by written letter or written statement. You can be hooked up by the phone. You could Skype. It's a relaxed rule, so there is no cross-examination.
Sounds like that part's working. The ambassador role, if I can continue, I've heard from downtown people has worked excellently. Better than when the commissionaires were there, people loved it. Then we went to the contractors and people didn't like it, and we shifted back to this thing. How many spots are there in the downtown core, and what percentage are they used at now? Like previously, a decade ago, I heard some 5,000 parking spots in the downtown core, both city and private, and used at 30%, like use.
Right now, Monday through Saturday, the commercial street, the free 2-hour zone, is above 80%. We consider anything over 80% as capacity. The metered spots in the downtown, up by the courthouse and in and around those areas, are as well running over 80% capacity during the Monday to Friday when court's in session. It's very busy. As I mentioned before, that with monthly rentals in the Bastion Parkade now, it's running very close to capacity. The Harbourfront Parkade is running very close to capacity, and this with half of this, the conference center, of course, is leased to the casino. Not quite half, 66 spaces, I believe it is leased to the casino on a monthly basis. That leaves the lower level that we've put Sea-Air has taken 20-some spaces down there. We still get other people that inquire, and we are working our best to increase that capacity, but we still have capacity in this one, but I don't have the exact number.
Private lots. I appreciate that. I guess that part of my concern with that is that when you hear that a new business comes into town and they have hundreds of employees in a new internet business, and all of a sudden we're making great revenue from that business. Who pays taxes? Who's employing people? Fair wages or not, or whatever, I don't know, but it seems like whenever we get a busy place and we target that busy place, it becomes an expanded service. Our bylaw officers from downtown have been at the Colliery Dams even. You didn't mention that they're doing service there, so there are multiple businesses. This is one portion of bylaw. I'd love to see when we get these that it says this is part of bylaw, where it fits under, how many administrators are attached to it, and where that. I'd love to see it in boxes, a flow chart and that, to see in what department it's in, and then to have my numbers. 4% for administration is good to know. I've asked that before, like Vieira from same department or Mr. Seward's department, but we couldn't get a 4% figure. It's nice to know that there is a figure based on that. What difference on that supply contract, services and supply from the external model, the citation and the meters and cash collection, night security, cleaning and maintenance, is that included in that 900,000 for their services?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Beswick.
Thank you. Thanks for the information and presentation. I just need to clarify a couple things from my thinking. You mentioned that we're writing fewer tickets in 2015. I don't know how many fewer, but considerably fewer, the ambassadorial side of the equation. I think you said something in the neighborhood of 14,000 tickets, 12 to 14, but we're around 8.
That's correct.
Thank
Rough
you.
numbers.
Thanks. And then, so about 40% fewer tickets being written, and that our Friday and weekends are free.
Friday evenings.
Friday evenings. Thanks. And so I think we estimated when the DMBAA made that request, it would be somewhere in the $40,000 to $50,000 in gross dollars that we would surrender, so to speak.
Once again, that's without having that report in front of me. I thought it was between 30 and 40,000, something in that range.
40,000 top end. Thanks. So I don't know if we can transfer this type of success, but we're writing fewer tickets and Fridays are free, and we've increased our operating revenue by 20% from our 2014 forecast in revenue at 1.456748 to our forecast to 1.737755. So we're up 300,000, just shy of. We're writing fewer tickets, and we gave away Friday nights. I was part of that. I'm not blaming it. I voted in favor of that too. So if there's any way possible, we can take this model and apply it elsewhere, could you please make that happen? Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Very good information. Appreciate having that. And I also have heard very good comments about the ambassadorial program. I could have benefited from it myself recently. Too bad the Port Authority doesn't use something similar. My question, if you'll bear with me, Mr. Mayor, is not directly related to comparing in-house against external models, but I heard Mr. Davidson state earlier that when there's any type of event downtown, basically all our parking is full. And it seems to me that we're having more and more events downtown. We're encouraging people to come downtown. There's been a suggestion that as we look to the future of Maffeo Sutton Park, some people feel that we should remove parking from there as an option. And all those considerations make me wonder, and I'll ask through you, Your Worship, to staff, have we thought ahead to a strategy for actually increasing parking downtown? Is there a thought to future parkades or strategy for dealing with the increased numbers of people that want to have parking downtown? Maybe that can't be answered right now, but I'm certainly curious.
We're developing less parking.
So, Your Worship, that is a good discussion, and that's something that I think Council and staff should put on our radar to talk about. We did purchase or acquired another property as part of the school district land exchange in the Old City, which was the first addition to parking that we've had in quite a while. My personal feeling is that we probably won't be recommending, it's up to Council, of course, further big expenditures in terms of parkades, that at some point the land values in the private sector as holding properties will start to enter the foray of parking solutions. But that's entirely up to Council, and we should have that discussion because there's definitely a continued perception that we have to get over about how parking availability exists in the downtown, and it's very important for our merchants to feel like we're supporting them in terms of that aspect, and it's a continued discussion we should have.
Thank you. I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. In a minor way, we have tasked staff to come back with a recommendation on increased parking, maybe for RV or buses in the property located right next door. So that might be expanded in some degree, or may not be, but 2 weeks ago we did task staff to come back with a report on parking on that site and other potential uses.
Thank you. No further questions. Any closing comments? None? Thank you very much. Thanks, Toby. Motion to receive the delegation. Motion seconded by Councillor Foote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. You're opposed. Okay. Motion to receive the presentation. No. It's all good. So while they get set up. Next item is garbage automation. And we have Mr. Jeff Goodall. No, we don't have Mr. Jeff Goodall. And Ms. Charlotte Davis, Manager of Sanitation and Recycling. And go ahead, Mr. Hickey.
Provide a little bit of an introduction. In June, Council received a presentation regarding automated collection and authorized at that time the purchase of 2 automation-ready solid waste trucks. At that meeting, Council asked staff to provide more detailed financial information and requested another session to further discuss the automated collection strategy. Charlotte Davis, our Manager of Sanitation and Recycling, is here now to do a presentation, and we'll provide more financial information. And we can then assist you in answering questions and assisting you in your discussion related to automated collection and that strategy. Charlotte.
Thank you, Tom. So this presentation is going to be short. We're not going to have death by PowerPoint. There'll be lots of time afterwards for questions. What I'm going to cover primarily is, this isn't, excuse me. What I'm going to cover primarily is the timeline of how we could implement such a program. We're going to look at the finances of this and then also what the opportunities are. So the timeline I'm proposing to automate our full sanitation fleet is a 3-year program. This would incorporate purchase of 8 new automated trucks, 6 are large, 2 are small, and also the purchase of about 90,000 wheeled carts, that's 3 for every household. As I said, it's a 3-year implementation program which could take place at any time. The plan I have in the binder is starting now with completion by September 2018. And that would mean that the recycling contract is completely in-house by that time also. The plan means that the fleet estimated useful lifespan is 10 years as opposed to our 15 years that we currently have. And the large trucks are estimated at about $400,000 and the small trucks are estimated at about $240,000, with the split packers being sold off. So you've got a copy of this one in your binder, if you want to flip to that. But basically, this is a implementation flowchart of how we could go about this. This one, the dates start pretty much now, but what you can see here is 3 key implementation waves. So we wouldn't automate the whole city in one go, we'd do it in 3 major waves, and each wave would have a period of order and delivery for the vehicles, order and delivery for the bins, project promotion and public consultation, and also financing periods, because what we're doing with the bins is we're purchasing them in 3 lots and financing from the MFA over a 5-year period. So that's why the project ends here in 2023, because the last year of bin purchases in 2018, and then we'd carry on paying that back over 5 years, which is charged out through the user rate completed by that stage. So this plan, as it is, all routes are automated by September 2018, but this is just a 3-year plan, and we could do this at any point. Doesn't have to start now, could start whenever. And what that would mean for our operations, you've seen this before, this is how it would work if we were automated. We'd actually move from 30 routes to 40 routes. We would have 6 routes that would be operated by the large truck, and 10 routes, sorry, not 6 routes. We'd have 30 routes operated by the 6 large trucks and 10 routes operated by our 2 smaller vehicles. All of our vehicles would be split pack trucks with no contractor required. And we'd keep that alternating thing we do right now. So 1 week could be kitchen waste and garbage, 1 week could be kitchen waste and recycling. We'd just be doing it all in-house. Okay, so I'm going to go through this a little bit line by line. This is the financial analysis of the plan, of the 3-year plan. And this sits on top of our user rate. I'll go through the user rate in a moment.
What tab is it?
This is tab 2.
Thank you.
So this sits on top of our user rate as it currently stands, and is the differences between what we're doing right now and what we would be doing if we were automated. So, wages and benefits. We currently have a temporary full-time employee who we're using to run the spare vehicle, which would not be needed if we were to go to automation. So there'd be the saving of that temporary full-time employee. Also occurring in the wages and benefits is we'd be using a co-op student for the first 8 months of the programme, just for consultation and dealing with members of the public. When we're looking at the recycling contract, this is one of our major areas of savings because we're bringing this in-house in 3 waves. And so really the reason why this, although it would be completely in-house by 2018, you can see here what we'd project it to cost if we didn't bring it in-house and if the city kept growing. That's what that is there. And it's showed like that because we're just comparing it to what we currently project if we did nothing. You've got bin distribution costs there. We'd be rolling out the programme in 3 phases, so 3 phases of bin distribution also. Programme promotion, this is something we want to get right and we want to start as soon as possible really, is to engage with our residents, understand what they want, what the questions are, how we can deliver a programme that's best for Nanaimo for our specific needs, and then to engage residents to help them use the programme the best way they can. And then a one-time purchase of computer software, which is the route management software. We have next up the fleet rates. These are annual operating and maintenance costs, and also the contribution to the reserve for the replacement of the fleet. So largely those increase there because of the increase to the cost of the vehicles. And then moving on to the financing section, we're purchasing the carts, like I said, in 3 waves and purchasing those through the MFA. So that starts, the first purchase would be in 2016, that would be paid back over 5 years. The second purchase would be in 2017, paid back in 5 years. And the third purchase would be in 2018, paid back in 5 years, which is why it completes in 2023. And then you can see it does impact our revenue because at the moment we sell garbage tags, the $3 tag if you've got an extra bag, and we wouldn't be doing that once we were automated because what we would offer with them would be an option to have a different size of bin. So if you had extra waste, in theory you'd have the correct size bin, so you wouldn't be offering that service and there'd be no hand-thrown garbage anymore.
Go ahead.
On that, I get a big bin. I can throw an engine block in it, as one of my friends talked to me about, and you wouldn't even know.
I would know.
How would you know it was me?
Because
now you're going to know.
I would know because my refuse collector, there's cameras in the hopper, and we would see it go in we'd know it was you because we'd see it going at the time, and on our onboard computer, we'd note that as an infraction having happened at your address, and live time, that would be through the internet sent back to the front office, where we would dispatch and contact you straight away.
And I have to get the engine out of the truck then?
Well, no, I wouldn't ask the resident to get the info, but we'd...
So there's cameras in it, and
Yeah.
the guy watches it dump?
Yeah.
Okay. I answered that. I can't throw my engine.
Go on, Ms. Davis.
So what all this means compared to what we do now. So blue is what we do now. This is our current user rate for garbage and collection in the city. So at the moment we charge each household $99.75 every year, and we come to your door and take those 3 streams of waste. If we were to automate, I reckon next year we'd be it'd come in about $108 per household, sorry. And as you can see, there is an increase to the user rate with this plan initially, because we have to purchase the bins, we have to purchase the trucks. Those initial capital cost will cost us. But there is the savings that's mainly driven by the saving of the recycling contract, and that's coming in-house. That recycling contract costs us about $660,000 a year, and it's only going to get more expensive. So once we've purchased the capital assets, we actually start making a saving, and that saving is seen and felt by residents in 2022.
I have a question for you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, but life cycle of these trucks are
10 years.
So now you stopped at 2024. What's 2025 going to look like? Since we just had to buy new trucks again, because the ones we bought in 2016, its life cycle is over.
Yes. So all the while,
our savings aren't going to continue. They're going to kind of go back up, right?
No, not right. All the while we pay fleet rates that goes into the fleet replacement fund, and that's happening all the while this is going on. So absolutely we would be purchasing new trucks again, but we'll have saved up in our bank to do that. Yeah. Well, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So it won't be that we'll be at zero. We'll have saved up to purchase new vehicles in the fleet replacement fund.
Ms. Davis, I want to ask you a question. I noticed that the highest rate there we see there with automated is at $120.63.
Yes.
And I'm looking at Vancouver, Surrey, and all over, and there's wild differences in Vancouver 360 liter bin.
Yes.
Liter bin, $327 a year.
Yes.
Burnaby, $385. Kamloops, $220. Those are huge differences.
Yes, this is on tab 8. The city of Renheim is actually a really affordable place to live when it comes to garbage collection, which is very interesting considering we have one of the highest tipping rates in all of BC, if not the highest. So we are a very lean service right now in what we do, and I think it's a reflection of a good service we're offering, but also it's at the cost of our operators, you could say, at the moment.
And the amount of diversion, I would suspect.
Yes, absolutely. If we were to automate, we could increase the diversion.
Are you looking at multi-tiered bin size rates?
Yes, I would recommend that we do something like that, yes.
So that will change some of those numbers. Those are averages, right?
It could do, and I would want the incentive to be if you wanted to recycle more, if you wanted a larger recycling bin, that we wouldn't charge you more for that, but if you wanted a larger garbage can, we would charge you more for that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So that's a key point, actually, that the Mayor mentioned about the user rate going up to $120 in 2020, because our user rate in 2013 was actually $125. So we're not going to anything over where we've already been. And the reason that it dropped down in 2014 and 2015 is because we started receiving the revenue in from MMBC. The good thing about MMBC is we're locked in with them at the current rate they're paying us, which is about $1 million a year, until May of 2019. So this is a really good time to be doing this project because we've got that revenue guaranteed until then. After then, who knows what they're going to do to their rates. So for now, we've got that guaranteed. So I'll move on to section 3, to the user rate calculation. This is in tab 3 if you want to have a closer look to this.
3.
And this is currently, this is our current user rate, so how we work out what we charge our residents right now. So in the first line, for us to get out there and collect your waste and tip it and to pay our staff and to run the vehicles, that costs us $2.6 million. Then also incorporating to the user rate, we have some community programs, which is the One-Stop Zero Waste Depot, namely the NRE, to which we fund about $102,000 a year. And then we have the residential curbside program. This is the collection of recycling. We use Progressive Waste for that. And we pay them about $660 to $680 a year, depending on, what our actual growth of the city is. And then when we look at other costs, we also pay to empty the street waste receptacles. We have, and that's about $56,000 a year. We also have a Cleaner Community Partnership, which is when litter picking groups come in and clean up the streets for us. And that's a really nice community field project there where non-profit groups come in and get paid $50 a kilometre to pick litter on the streets. It costs us about $32,000 a year to deliver the annual calendars. It costs us about $145,000 to send out the user rate bills for garbage. And then we also spend about $60,000 a year on public education and promotion. When we're looking at revenue, so what offsets this, we charge back exactly what we don't get through, exactly what it costs us, rather. So the user rate, we charge about $2.6 million. We also, that's topped up by the almost $1 million we get from MMBC. $132,000 that we get from the sales of garbage tags, and then we sell about $6,000 worth, of green bins. So if you can come to the city and buy a green bin for $25, and we don't make any money on that, but it's slightly cheaper than going to Canadian Tire, for example, and we assure that then you've got the right receptacle at your door. So that's what our user rate is, and do I have a chart? Oh no. So here is what the chart of that is, what it's projected to carry forward for. And it's, we've projected far off into this 2024, but finance have kind of approved that. So that's what we think what would happen if we do nothing and we stay manual. We'd still be needing to purchase trucks. The purchase of the trucks is in there. And we see that there's no savings to be made because we continue working with that recycling contractor. So the rates would steadily climb. Okay, so looking at the opportunities here, the primary opportunity with automating is reducing worker injuries. These are some statistics that Andrew and I gathered from Vancouver. Vancouver automated in 2007. The rollout began in 2004 and was completed in 2007, hence the steady decline. They have 24 refuse collectors, so that's about 3 times the number that we have. The spike in injuries in 2009, because I thought, that doesn't look very good, that's actually caused by what they called a snowmageddon. So they were all slipping and sliding all over in the snow that year, unfortunately. And the majority of injuries post-2007 are related to soft tissue injuries like carpal tunnel and RSI. That's one of the things we're going to have to look for if we do go automated. They're going to be using a joystick all day rather than throwing cans. So that's something that could be an issue and is always resolved through training. That's what I hear. So this is a nice video from WorkSafe out Vancouver.
It's a dirty job picking up a city's trash, and as we say, somebody's got to do it. Here in Vancouver, it's a cleaner job and a much safer job in terms of illness and injury. That's thanks to a combination of investment, innovation, and teamwork. The difference is a new automated method of garbage pickup using specially built trucks with an articulated hydraulic arm that does the lifting and dumping. Ward Gogol has worked for Vancouver's sanitation department for 16 years.
As you're getting older, it gets a lot tougher on the body. I noticed a lot of guys my age were complaining a lot more and falling apart a lot quicker.
The City of Vancouver Sanitation Branch had a large amount of WCB claims related to musculoskeletal injuries injuries from getting on and off the truck related to garbage collection. So we were approached by WCB to look at different options for improving health and safety within the branch, as well as to reduce injuries.
Not only is the process new, the way in which the change was made is quite forward-thinking, in that it involved vehicle operators, engineers, maintenance staff, and management, as well as the city's ergonomist.
We took a trip down to Oklahoma, where the manufacturer was, and we ended up getting a truck that was specifically designed for some of the challenges we have in our laneways in the Vancouver. We have a lot of very tight corners, a lot of very short, narrow laneways, so we had to get a truck that was suitable for all of those areas.
85% of the city is serviced by the new trucks, 90,000 households. In some areas, the lanes are too narrow for even these vehicles.
Before automated collection, each crew would have to manually lift between 10,000 and 15,000 pounds of garbage on a daily basis. With just the injury reduction and the sick time reduction alone, we probably save about $220,000 a year. The staff are no longer lifting garbage cans, so they're not doing any of the heavy lifting. It's absolutely a good thing for them. I mean, normally a typical day for a garbage man would start at 7 o'clock, and by 7:30 they'd be sweaty, they'd be dirty, they'd been sprayed with garbage juice. They could have been exposed to hazardous material at the back of the truck from throwing a garbage can in there. Now, with the operators, they sit in an air-conditioned cab. It's heated, it's cooled in the summertime. There's no more on and off the truck or being exposed to any hazardous materials.
Yes, a lot of guys were so totally against it, totally against it. They had no part of it whatsoever, right? I don't want nothing to do with it. A lot of them said that, right? And as time went on, they went, wow, you know, it's not that bad. And it isn't that bad, you know, and in the end, if you want to physically save yourself, well, then this is the way to go.
It must be a huge bonus to finish up the day right now not smelling like other people's garbage.
Ah, isn't it wonderful? Yes, I know. My kids notice it all the time. They say, oh, you smell pretty good today, Dad.
In Prince George, where a similar program won the Safety Innovation Award for 2006, the drivers have even started wearing ties to work.
I threatened the refuse operators with ties, actually.
Councillor Kemp.
I heard the term apples to oranges in the previous one. Are we comparing? Vancouver has no recycling. They just throw everything into the bin, meat, everything. They have no nitrogen or no carbon pickup. Their bins, I mean, you look in Vancouver, they throw it, I think it's 900 kilograms per person per year compared to our 340. No wonder they needed to go automated, but their system, we're comparing the different systems. I mean, our system is segregated into green bins, into garbage only once a week, into recycling, and Vancouver isn't at that. They're still once a week, fill the can with whatever you can throw away and hit the curb with it. So is this apples to oranges when you compare Vancouver?
So, Your Worship, we think it is. Primarily, if you just even compare the injury rates that we're having, the comparison for the weight related to our refuse that the garbage workers are lifting has caused a 100% injury rate within our workforce.
It was a bad design in the truck, though, I understood. That's what I believe WCB or WorkSafe pointed it to. The bin lift was too high. Is that it?
No, that's not it. And also, we're just thinking about Vancouver. Vancouver has actually started this year collecting organics, so they are separating it out. Our guys lift between 2.5 and 5.5 tons a day, depending on their day. You can see in tab 7 that over the last 3 years has added up to $430,000 of cost to the city through our WorkSafe, which is not incorporated into this. And it is the repetitive motion that's causing this. It's the amount of throws they do, and it's the weight they're lifting, and they just, it's breaking them every day. When you look at the information in tab 8, this is the 15 largest cities in BC. And you can see that a lot of them are automated or considering automation. And the main driver, when I questioned these cities, it was because of the injury rates. And so it's not just Vancouver that's going through this, and it's not just us, and it's not just our truck design. It's the fact that we're asking our guys to lift 5.5 tons a day.
It's the fact that people are throwing too much crap and getting too much crap.
At the moment,
not stopped at source.
And at the moment, all of everybody's waste is getting thrown out through the curbside anyway. So it's great if we're diverting it to the Nanaimo organic composting place, but it still needs to get collected by our refuse collectors. So the tonnage is still there no matter where it's going. And I don't see that's going to change.
Well, that's the thing, when we hear the word diversion, it just doesn't go to our dump, but it goes somewhere else.
It absolutely does, and we do a very good job of that in here.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. I got actually a whole bunch of questions. I've been writing them down, if you don't mind. I'll fire them off one at a time. These trucks, Canadian made or US made?
So in general, the body is Canadian made, and the cabin chassis in general would be US made.
So did these prices reflect that the 30% drop in our Canadian dollar compared to when you showed this to us last year?
No, these prices have not changed. We have a budgeted amount of $400,000, which we feel is sufficient, though, regardless of those changes, for the purchase of the vehicle, even with the US exchange rate as it is.
That's a 30% difference? So
We
we actually over budgeted 30%?
we
Pretty good.
we feel that we can accommodate the change at the moment, and we also feel that, especially if we were to purchase from one manufacturer, there's benefits there as well that would help us do that.
Your Worship, I don't know the answer to this, but it may be worth understanding where the existing garbage trucks are made as well, if there's any impact relative to the same question.
Is that Ted?
If we don't go with the automated truck, are they made in the States as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So
there's,
all of
there's
it.
no change, is
yeah.
my point, regardless of what asset we're buying, their portions come from the States.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we going to have to hire more staff because of automation?
No, we'd actually be able to get rid of one member of staff, and it's only the temporary full-time employee. But yeah, they'd be dropping one.
Okay. And then I'm still trying to understand the MMBC part, but they're giving us $1 million until 2019, and then you said you don't know what's going to happen then. So what happens if they give us nothing?
So through your worship, I don't think they'll give us nothing, but I do think our rates will decrease unless we start to split out our recycling. At the moment, MMBC pay us per household about $32.25 per household to collect all the recycling. We collect it in one yellow bag. For them, they would prefer if we were to collect it in two packages, one being paper and one being the cartons. And if we were to change in that direction, I think it's likely that the revenue from them would stay about the same. We're contracted with them till May 2019 at the current rate, so that's great. We know we're fine until then. But in in 2019, they might change it around so that we're incentivized to start splitting out the recycling. Nevertheless, if they want to keep us a collector, they're going to keep paying us. I just don't know what it is, and I've asked them, and they're not able to tell me because they don't know either.
So would these trucks be able to do that, like the splitting of two, or is that going to change how much staff we're going to use, or the pickup schedules and how you were rotating one from the other? Because if we're actually picking up, a blue bag and a yellow bag, kind of, how is that going to work with automation?
I think that's an unknown, is what I'm hearing. That's one of the risks to everything that we're doing. We can only project so far out. The bigger impediment to the cost is going to be as growth happens, because, and I've forgotten what the number of population increase that we will have will require a whole new route to be installed, and that then becomes the biggest jump in the cost to service the new route.
Okay, and I'll continue on. $32,000 to deliver pieces of paper. It just seems a little ridiculous. I don't understand why we just can't tape it to the garbage cans if the collector is already picking up garbage. So that was just a comment I didn't understand.
I can answer that one. That includes the printing and everything. So it's about 75 cents a piece, and then it includes delivery. Right, so.
Yeah, I was thinking the delivery model could have been done by the garbage collector, just sticking it on the garbage can as he emptied it, but I'm just cheap that way. The other thing was, as I looked at the pretty WorkSafe video, and there's no cars parked on those streets. Makes life really easy to pick up a garbage can, but if you've actually been around the streets in Nanaimo, the hills and the roads, and getting a garbage can to a position where that machine could pick it up, is that even feasible on our streets with the amount of cars that have on-street parking? What are they going to do?
That's a really good question, and it is absolutely, the systems are designed to work in populated areas where cars are parked. So the arm has about a 10-foot reach, and it can reach above and around a vehicle. So you can absolutely collect in parked areas. And example in Saanich, it's a heavily parked residential area, and they collect waste from there. They don't have issues. One thing that you want to do is make sure your operators are properly trained. Set up a rodeo or something like that in advance where they can get in and get used to operating the joystick and not start bashing people's cars.
Okay, thank you.
And can I rewind to the MMBC question, because it's something I've thought about, because I don't want it to upset our future of our system. One is, it wouldn't be possible for them to make us start splitting out our recycling. And two is, if we felt the financial incentive was strong enough for us to start doing that, we could absolutely work that situation into our automated collection, because we've got split vessels. So I don't see it being too much of an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Davis, for the presentation. Good information. A couple of points. One, I don't think I heard you mention this, and it might not be in the foreseeable future, but I'm assuming the automated system would allow us to consider, if we wished, collection of yard waste.
Yes, it would. Yes, through your worship, absolutely it would. So right now we're bound by WorkSafe regulations that our guys can't collect anything that's heavier than 44 pounds. If we were to do this, the automated arm can pick up a bin that weighs 500 pounds. So there's no weight limit there. We just need to negotiate with Nanaimo Organic Waste to co-mingle in one bin food waste and yard waste. At the moment, there isn't a price for that. But I've spoken with them in advance, and that he'd be absolutely willing to consider that and be in the interest of their business. So it's something that I would love to consult with our residents and offer up to them to find out whether it's the service they want or not. Certainly, I hear a lot of the time that it is. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I've heard that from a number of people as well, and I realize that's a separate discussion, but it's good to know that that option would be there. Yeah. My other comment would be, I think in the previous presentation regarding parking, we heard about the license recognition system and basically how the advance in technology has saved us money and made the job more efficient. And to me, it seems that this is a similar type situation. This is technology that will cut down on injuries, which is of great importance, and make the collection, I would hope, more efficient.
That would also be my hope as well. Thanks,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Thorpe. Yes.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. Councillor Thorpe and I spoke earlier, and he took my question about the yard waste. Just kidding. Just kidding. I heard you say that the increase would be approximately $8 from 100 and whatever to 100 and something for household in the first year. Sorry, I don't have my binder. I'm in the process of moving and everything's in boxes. And that we take a percentage of the fees that we charge and apply to vehicle, whatever, depreciation or vehicle repurchase.
Yes.
Okay. And that being said, are we doing about 30,000 homes? Is that fair?
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you. It's kind of a byproduct of that conversation when we speak to other vehicles paid for by user fees in collection over the city. For example, like Zambonis for me. I know we can't do that with all of our fleets, trucks and cars, because there's no revenue necessarily coming in for a vehicle replacement in some cases. But when we have, can I ask staff if we do the same thing? Tom, do we do this, or Mr. Hickey, sorry, do we do the same thing with Zamboni replacements when we have arenas that have 5 or 6 of them?
Yes, Mayor McKay, in answer to Councillor Bestwick's question, for all our fleet, we do have a portion of the charge goes to reserve. And so in Parks and Recreation, when the Zamboni and the arena is charged both the operating expense and a fleet reserve charge, so that in the 10 or 15 years that we use that Zamboni, we collect enough money to repurchase another one. And that would answer Councillor Hong's question about why the price doesn't go up, because we charge ourselves each and every year for the vehicle. So yes, you're correct, Councillor Bestwick, we do have that in each department, and that's charged through each cost center.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate that. Question for me is, when, and I agree with the yard waste scenario, I think that that would be a real feature. How that plays out, I don't know. We just approved 2 trucks.
Yes.
And are these the 2 trucks that you're talking about that we've just purchased? Are these the ones?
Yes, they would be, absolutely. We have not submitted that tender yet. What we wanted to do was go through today's discussion and see how you felt about the full plan. There are some benefits if we were to be able to mention in the tender that we are looking to purchase a further 4 vehicles. We can get to that, but absolutely those vehicles that were approved in June are automation-ready vehicles that would work within this system.
And is the presentation over, by the way? Or are you?
Not quite.
Okay, well, I'll reserve the balance of my questions.
Okay.
Councillor Fuller.
I have a couple questions around the life expectancy. You mentioned at the beginning that the new vehicles have a 10-year life expectancy. The older vehicles have a 15-year life expectancy. Now, are we looking at 8 new vehicles or 6?
8, 6 large, 2 small.
Okay. And roughly 400,000, so roughly $3.2 million. How much are other vehicles? What's the cost of that?
The vehicles we purchased, the split vessel vehicles we purchased in 2011, I believe cost us about $270,000 each. The difference at the moment between a manual and an automated truck is about $40,000.
Okay. Yeah, so the cost savings with the 5-year added life expectancy could actually be quite substantial.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Well, no, not by automating, by not automating.
By not automating. The thing is...
but you have to balance that with injuries. I get all this.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to why one would have 5-year less life expectancy.
Yeah, of course.
And that would have to be because of the automation, I would think.
Mayor McKay, just in answer to Councillor Fuller's question, we were amortizing our trucks over a 15-year period. We are finding, though, that they just aren't lasting that long because of the heavy use. So while we could on paper say it's 15 years, the practicality is they're not making that long. So that's why we said, hey, we've got to start putting in enough money to replace the vehicles every 10 years. And we tested that against what other communities are doing, and they're all going with more of a 10-year service life for vehicles.
Councillor Brennan.
I recognize, Ms. Davis, that you're not at the end of your presentation, so I'll just wait.
Okay.
Please, go ahead,
Okay,
Ms. Davis.
thank you. So the second opportunity here is looking at usability. So we feel that an automated system would be more user-friendly for our workers and our residents. First off, there's no more lifting anymore of any waste containers. You wheel your container out to the curbside and then the mechanical arm lifts it. It's a cleaner and neater system, which is certainly evident in many municipalities that have got an automated system. I think it was Surrey where they've just said, you know, the appearance of the residences and the neighbourhoods has just improved no end. It's a cleaner and neater looking system. Also, the receptacles won't blow away, which is a major thing we hear about from our residents right now, that their cans are blowing away, and so these are nice and heavy and will be left right there at the curbside when they're emptied. The picture in the corner there is a picture of the onboard computer, and this is what will allow us to do those targeted communications. So if anybody does put the engine block out in their bin, we will know who it is, where it was, and we will be able to communicate with them directly at the time. There's all types of infractions we can record on this. that are fed back into the office in lifetime. So the office will be up to date at the moment as to exactly what's going on at the curbside, which bins have emptied, which bins haven't been emptied, which bins have had which problems. And also another feature of this system is that we can offer bin choice. So if you've got a family of 5 children and the 77-litre bin is not cutting it, you can have a larger bin to allow you to dispose of those diapers. And then also we want to get going with customer consultation. So if this is really going to be a user-friendly system, we need to start speaking with our residents about what they want now. And I'm keen to get that going. It's very important that we make this a success for our residents as much as it is for our workers. And so I'm keen to start going on that as soon as we can. The third benefit is that we have a flexible and reliable fleet. So the truck that you approved us to purchase back in June is an automation-ready vehicle. This is a photograph of one of those. And basically, it's a vehicle that has a drop frame and the automated arms. So you can still throw garbage in, and you can also collect in an automated fashion. And this is really flexible for us, particularly if we're looking at automating over a 3-year period. Because we certainly don't want to have vehicles that we can only run on automated routes. This vehicle, you could collect waste from automated cans and also from a manual route. So it's a perfect solution for us. And also it'd be more reliable than the vehicles we have, because we don't feel we would have the same amount of vehicle downtime, because we'd be getting rid of a lot of those issues. And finally, the fourth opportunity is that we would bring recycling in-house. So this is the item that caused us the most amount of savings and lowers the user rates once those capital investments have been made. And as you can see, it would work because we have the split vessel. So every week you collect kitchen waste in one side of the vehicle, and then we'd be alternating garbage and recycling in the other side of the vehicle. There's no additional collectors needed for this, no additional trucks, and like I said, no contract. So that's the real boon to that one. And I'm done.
Thank you. I have a number of questions for you. I don't see Councillor Brennan. Do you want to go first? You were there first.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I got some questions too. Go ahead.
Oh, it sounds like Councillor Bestwick thought he was in the queue before me, and I'd be happy to. Okay. There's lots of things I like about this, and you articulated all of them: the occupational safety, cost savings for the budget, emphasis on the ease of use for the homeowners or for residents, bringing recycling back in. I'm just wondering about the NRE and what we use the NRE for now. Mm-hmm. We will still need, I'm not saying the NRE, but we will still need another place to do recycling. Is that correct?
That's right. I don't ever see a day where we don't need a depot.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Kep.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, currently out of the regional district, we have the RDN Advisory Committee on Solid Waste. We have the policy group. And we have now an Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities has now got a solid waste committee that I'm on. From my perspective, I wish we were really regionalizing our services more, like, the whole of our regional area being on a similar system. And so that for me is one that, and apples to oranges across our area. There's no multi-unit still in this plan, is there?
No.
And that's a concern to me. I heard you say, or Councillor Bestwick said, there's how many households do we pick up from? It's not 30. We only got...
It's 26,500.
From individual houses?
Single-family dwellings up to 4plexes in size.
Oh, 4plexes not included. Okay,
yes.
Yeah. Single-family is less than the 26,000. Yes. So that's okay. It's multifamily to 4s. The size and the cost issue to me is always a concern. Being able to just, there's got to be a point when we stop people from throwing tons of garbage away. Mm-hmm. That point has to come. Because our landfill is almost full. We're spending lots of money on organic waste that really has no value. We're not getting a value on that organic waste. We've upped the price on that. We've got a number of businesses out there now that are involved in this too. And for me, I really think we have to get, if we really want to make an impact, we have to get to that multi-unit and better sort of separation of that multi-unit. And like I say, right now I understand the automation. I think it is a good idea, but I certainly wish we could tie it into more regional services. So, and the multi-unit. I don't see multi-unit in our plan currently. So I think that's one council has to determine too. Thank you.
Councillor Beswick.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate the presentation. I'm curious about also I think it's in somewhere, the $80,000 resale value on our existing split trucks that we have. Is that an estimate?
Yes, it is.
Or is that, do we have somebody or municipality or otherwise or multiple out there that are going, yes, please, when you're selling those, call us first. Don't let us lose this opportunity.
Actually, yeah. It is an estimate, but I've actually had 2 municipalities give me a bell and ask me when I'm selling them and express their interest. So
you mean they phoned you?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yes, they phoned me.
As long as that wasn't part of the down payment, right? 'Cause they gave you a bell. Okay. Okay. So 2 municipalities have inquired
Yes.
about purchasing one or multiples. Because they need the multiple for the parts for the first one.
They'd be interested in more than one, yes.
Okay, so 80,000, we have how many to sell?
We have 4.
4, okay. So, all right, thank you. Question about the camera, is that a stock item? Or is that, okay, it comes stock, and hydraulics? So currently we don't have the hydraulics on the lift.
Mhm.
So currently we don't have any maintenance issues or factors with our, so when you're speaking with the Burnabys of the world and that, do they speak to the any increased requirements for hydraulic stuff that they didn't have before in their shop?
Yeah, so there are increased maintenance requirements with these vehicles. However, we already have increased maintenance with the vehicles we currently have because, as you know, they're rather difficult to maintain. So our feeling is certainly, from when Bruce has spoke with his peers, that the maintenance that we have right now on our current vehicles would be about the same rate as if we go automated, because we're already maintaining our vehicles at that high rate. And that is because we have things in our trucks right now, like the conveyor and also the hydraulic green bin tip, which is a little bit tricky, and there's a lot of maintenance involved with that in the hydraulics. Yes.
So we don't think there'll be any savings, I guess I was
No
hopefully
savings, but
getting
no
at.
additional costs either.
No additional cost, but no potential savings. What fuel do they operate on?
CNG,
Okay, thank you.
compressed natural gas.
Yes, thanks. I don't think I have anything else, so thanks very much.
Thank you. Well, Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I did get a chance to look through the binder ahead of time, and I really, really do appreciate all the different aspects that you were able to very clearly articulate for us. I was interested just from the comment that Councillor Kipp made around encouraging people to, reduce garbage. How do we even go about doing that? Of course, in a world where there's so much packaging and garbage, and we're all very busy recycling and changing to, separating our organics and so on. I'm wondering if there is any statistics locally around how that's changed over maybe a 2 or 3 year period, 5-year period, 10-year period, whenever we started really pushing, the organics and the recycling, and how that's changed over time, because it has to have changed. It certainly has changed in my house. I don't take out hardly any garbage anymore, but of course I'm taking out recycling and I'm taking out organics.
Yes.
So how that must have improved over time, though.
Mayor McKay, maybe I could tackle Councillor Pratt's question on that. And just going back before Charlotte was working for us, back many years ago, in fact, before my time, there was a strategy there where we ended up having these 70-liter garbage containers versus in Vancouver having 360-liter containers. The idea at that time, those containers were thought to be small, so people would be encouraged to spend time to recycle, and that's how we brought on recycling. We do find that some people in our community, that container size is too small for a family, but a lot of people do work to reduce. We hoped as a strategy that would work to reduce garbage. Moving to this will provide more options. And it's a big education thing, getting to people realize that garbage still needs to be put somewhere, and if we can not use materials and reuse them, that would be the best.
Thank you.
I wonder if I might get my questions in next, Councillor Besser. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I want to drill down a little bit, and I'm really concerned about this this notion of buying 2 this year, maybe 2 next year, and 2 the year after. How do we guarantee that we did the same thing with fire trucks? We bought 3 fire trucks over 3 years, and for user familiarity and best price, we committed to them prior to year 1. How do we go about that? Because I'm concerned that we're going to end up with 8 trucks, all 4 different brands.
Well, Your Worship, with the fire trucks, we also council also authorized pre-purchasing in American funds, hedging our bets that the rates would go up or down, depending on how you looked at it. So this is something we seek direction from council. If council believes there's value in securing a contract for all of the vehicles now, that would be direction you would provide us, and we'd go out and include that in the RFP.
Do we have to commit with funds up front, or can
No.
we commit to the purchase over 3 years?
That's correct. You could do it that way.
Thank you. I've talked to different people about the potential with discounts for placing an order of upwards of these 8 trucks in a single order or in a single commitment, so to speak. Do you have a better idea of what we could expect to save on a multi?
Yes, I do, Your
Clerk
Worship.
Gordon?
So I've spoken with 1 or 2 dealers about this, and they've provided information to me to say that they could estimate that we'd save about 5% on vehicles. This is provided to me in writing, so I was quite pleased with that. That's about $20,000 saving per vehicle, or $120,000 over for the full vehicle, for all the vehicles.
Wow. Wow. Are any of the dealers prepared, another question is, are any of the dealers prepared to take our current trucks in on trade at a guaranteed or somewhat guaranteed projected rate so that we could save on the taxes that we would pay on that trade-in value?
Yes, I believe there's one dealer that stepped forward and said that that would absolutely be a possibility, and that they didn't see that $80,000 figure is anything that they wouldn't be able to do, and that it would indeed save on taxes as well. So trading could definitely be an option.
So on one of the items that we've got with respect to the purchase rebates from Fortis is that there's 2, if I understand it, they're offering 2 incentives right now. One is an incentive to convert your vehicle, and the other one is an incentive in Nanaimo alone that says that if we can get so many trucks on the road with running on CNG, that we can now, there are commercial operators that are prepared to build a station. And one of those discounts or grants that they would be providing is for the incentive to be part of, or be the tipping point, if you will, to this new station. Does that still apply?
Yes, it absolutely does. So there's a 50% rebate on the table right now if we do go CNG. That's off the cost that's additional to have a CNG vehicle over a diesel vehicle. That cost additional is about $40,000. But there's an additional 20% available right now, so 70% in total, if we were to commit now to those initial vehicles being CNG for the local supply of the compressed natural gas. So that's about $28,000 per vehicle.
Okay. So now on cost of diesel versus gas, it's my understanding that right now diesel's got a rack rate of a local rack rate of about what, $1.18, $1.20, something like that?
Yeah, I just checked. I think it's about $1.16 in most places today.
$1.16.
Yeah.
And Fortis have committed to try to achieve a price for our CNG liter, diesel liter equivalent?
Absolutely. So Fortis have committed in writing to a diesel litre equivalent of 75 cents per litre for compressed natural gas. So 31 cents less a litre.
thank you. One last. Going mechanical, we have the ability, right now, we're restricted by workers' comp, as I understand, or WorkSafe, to no more than 600 picks a day. That mechanical trucks will allow us to go to as high, if the route is correct.
Yes.
It's a fairly dense route, to 900?
Well, we could collect whatever we want, but I would imagine our routes could be expanded to 900 homes per route, yes. And the good thing is if we're to start out on this plan, our first 2 automated routes would already impact our workers. They would reduce those routes down straight away. So just to get rolling would help our workers, you know, now. It's not necessarily going to be that they only get the benefit once they're on the automated truck. Those first 2 automated routes will benefit our workers.
Pardon me, Councillor Bestwick, for taking up some of your time. Go ahead, please.
We have nothing but time. Thanks. I just wanted to compliment you on having the capture of your information, and you haven't stumbled on a single question. And so I really want to compliment you for having full control of what it is that your subject matter you're talking about. 26,000 homes, plus or minus, if they've got 1.5 garbage, that's going to be about 40,000 plastic garbage cans that we're going to have to put in the landfill. What do people do with, like, when we replace, like, that's a lot of garbage cans that are going to be no longer used for anything.
So I think what we need to do is talk to residents about what they can do with their existing receptacles. When it comes to the green bins that were provided to them, there's a couple of things we could do. We could ask for residents to return them to us, and we could resell them. There are some people that would be interested in purchasing them. For those that weren't usable, we could have them recycled, and we would be paid for the plastic value of the resin. Also, we could let residents know about what they could do with the receptacles at home. So you might want to have that and use it to save up your plastic bags in, or to put your dog food in. It's a nice dry receptacle. There's alternatives for them, and we would spend time educating them about those.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, how many multi-units does the private service, approximately, service in the city of Nanaimo?
Don't actually know. Think about something like 18% of our residents live in a multifamily dwelling in Nanaimo. I don't know how many buildings there are, but I'm not servicing them, that's right.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, I said last question. It was a 2-part question. And at what cost? Like, what do we pay? What does the private contractor cost the city?
So there's no relationship there. It's completely separate.
So they just charge out separately to all the people?
Yeah.
So okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Brennan.
Councillor Bestwick has already said this, but I don't think he can say it too many times. That was a very impressive presentation, and your command of the information was outstanding. So I want to thank you for that. I just want to recheck this, the multifamily stuff. Did you say that we service residents up to and including fourplexes?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
Thank you. Do we currently have a CNG station in Nanaimo besides the RDN?
Yes, we do. We also have a slow fill station at the city yard right now, but only slow fill. But there is a CNG station that's fast fill at the RDN facility for the transit.
Yeah, so do we have to build one for the garbage trucks if we were to go with CNG?
No, actually what the mayor was referring to is that there's a facility being built right now that the purchase of these vehicles would secure part of that. So it's looking like there's one going in the Northfield area, and that if we get in early on board, that will incentivize that that building to be completed, and also it's the benefit of us really because it secures our future with CNG supply. Really, it's something that the city wants to pursue for all of our fleet, and without us having to expend the capital cost to get in now and to secure the building of that facility would be a big benefit to us long term. Particularly right now, we have just the slow fill available to us here at the city. So a fast fill facility, if we get on the ground floor, would be a big benefit, particularly at 75% per diesel litre equivalent.
Yeah, so we're not building that, right?
No, it's not us. There's no capital cost to us.
Oh, that's good. And then just to staff, like a couple of weeks ago, we got the purchasing price of vehicles, which is what, 1.4 million? Was that correct?
Councillor Hung, I believe you were referring to the list, the replacement list for vehicles in the 2015 budget. Yeah, it was something like that, yes.
Okay, so the garbage trucks, these 2 garbage trucks were coming out of that money, right? But that didn't really cost the taxpayers any money. That was an increase in budget. That was from reserves, if that's what you're saying?
Yes, all the fleet is funded for reserves, except if we're purchasing a new and additional vehicle from the fleet.
Okay, so these garbage trucks aren't new additionals. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. Can I just follow up on that, because I did ask Mr. Goodall some questions on that. So it was 1.6 and we had expended 1.2, and we had $400,000 remaining in 2015 in the allocated $1.6 million vehicle replacement budget. And I wasn't sure if of the 1.2, the 800 plus was in the 1.2 or not.
Yes.
But so the 1.2 is included, or sorry, the 800 plus for the 2 garbage trucks is included in the 1.2 that was indicated as expended?
I'll have to review that email just to double check, just to be sure, but I believe that's the case.
Yeah, I'm calling you at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? I would like to ask a question concerning the slow fills. So we've got a couple of pickup trucks, or a couple of smaller medium-duty vehicles
Yes.
that are on the slow fills, and they take all night.
Yes.
So and they cost about $10,000 if I recall.
Yes.
So if we're going to consider medium duty and light duty vehicles going to CNG, with the potential for this CNG station going at the co-op on Northfield, the new co-op on Northfield, we're not going to have to buy any more of these CNG slow fills.
Absolutely not. No, it's a lovely central location that works out really well for us here in the city, and it would secure our CNG supply. It was fast fill stations, no requirement for us to purchase any more slow fill or fast fill. So.
Thank you. My last question is for Mr. Swaby, and that is, how do we? I really want to go. We really want to look at this whole notion of commitment to and taking advantage of all the discounts and savings available to us for multiple purchase commitments and so on and so forth. How do we go about that? How do you suggest we go about that at this point?
Your Worship, I believe...
Providing counsel.
I believe a motion from council to staff to bring back a report with options for securing the entire fleet in one RFP to take advantage of all the incentives that were noted would be appropriate.
Mr. Jackson, do you think you might have captured that?
I believe we caught it, Your Worship, yes.
Thank you. I would like to make that motion.
I'll second it.
Seconded? Any discussion on the motion?
Could I have the motion read back? Sorry, just there might be something to add to it, or?
Your Worship, that staff bring back a report that provides the option to purchase the entire automated garbage fleet as part of the RFP that staff is working on to take advantage of all of the incentives that were noted tonight.
Thank you.
So that being said, if we're waiting to put out tender for the 2, we would have to have that. We would expect to see that report fairly quickly.
Yes, I could do that for you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. So that makes specific reference to the fleet. And if I just try to fast forward a bit and let's say we proceed with that purchase en masse, it doesn't address the garbage cans, or sorry, is that what the garbage, trash receptacles? I need to get somebody to bell me. It's so that cost would need to be potentially factored into, because if we were to proceed, and on 2016, August 1st, all of these trucks show up and they're on the road, then we would have to also be doing the receptacles to match.
Your Worship, I think
obviously.
that's a good friendly amendment to the motion, and we would include that.
Okay, that's one. And if I could, and any other related financial implications as a result, or something like that, in case there's something else that comes up and you go, oh, it's not in the motion. And I'm not suggesting, I just would like to see what all the financial implications would be if we were to make one purchase of 6 units or 8, or whatever it is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. That's my friendly.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Next item, 6A. Thank you very much. Port Drive Waterfront Master Plan Terms of Reference. And the presentation, there will be a presentation by Mr. Dale Lindsay and Mr. Bill Corson. Who would like to start?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start. I'm actually going to turn the microphones over to Mr. Corson, our Manager of Real Estate, and Mr. Anderson's also here this evening for Manager of Planning and Design. We're here, of course, to talk about the terms of reference for the Waterfront Master Plan. We were in front of you back in July seeking your approval on this terms of reference, and at that time there was a direction from Council to come back and have a broader discussion about these terms of reference. So we're taking the opportunity not just to talk about the terms of reference tonight, but just sort of to take a step back and talk about all of the developments that have been happening down on our properties. As Council knows, we bought this property 2 years ago, and at the time it was a very complex purchase. There's multiple issues that needed to be addressed. So we've been working on a number of fronts in the last 2 years to try to ultimately bring what's been a historic brownfield site to the market and for the potential of redevelopment. So we want to talk a little bit about what's been happening in the last 2 years and give you some context of the plan itself, the master plan, and why we think it's important to getting us to the next step. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Corson to start.
Thanks, Dale. I just want to start with a little video of the site because I think some of you are familiar with the property, some of you might not be. So this is just a 1-minute video about the property. And just kind of gives you some aerial context. So that's the property boundaries itself, 26.7 acres. This is a view looking west towards Mount Benson. So the property itself, 15.5 acres is occupied by C-SPAN at the moment through a right-of-way agreement. And Island Corridor Foundation have about 2.5 to 3 acres with their right-of-way. So the majority of the site is actually encumbered with right-of-ways. We've done some work on the site. We're going to go over the various projects we've done over the last 2 years. Again, it's just to give you some overview. One of the key issues in buying the site was to provide access to the Port Authority lands. And you'll see down here as we pan south, the wooden trestle is a major barrier for access. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Can I ask the question, the 28, total acreage?
26.7.
26.7. Does that include the water lot?
It does, yeah. So it's about 20 acres of land and around 6.7 acres of water.
Okay.
So it's kind of unique that we actually own the water because in most places in Nanaimo, the Port Authority controls the water. So I just wanted to begin by giving a bit of a timeline. So as Dale said, we purchased the property in March of 2013. And we knew in buying the property, one of the key drivers was the need to replace the trestle. And so we also know that C-SPAN is leaving in 2017. So working backwards, we know that we need to have plans in place by 2017, 2018 to move forward. And this is just, again, the property. So you can see the panhandle that forms the main road down to the Port Authority, as well as the trestle. So this, when we purchased the property, these were the tenants / right-of-ways we inherited. So you can see the large area for C-SPAN. We had a tenant called GAD Marine, which is where Island Ferries was going to go. We had Island Pallet Solutions as a tenant. So the majority of the site was occupied at that time. So the first piece of process we began with when we acquired the property was the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative. And this was looking at the lands we purchased, as well as the Port Authority lands, CP Rail, and the Gabriela Ferry Terminal. And this produced a vision and guiding principles to give some direction on how the various pieces might fit together in the future. We've done quite a lot of environmental work on the property, and you might recall we had an environmental consultant come in earlier this year and talk about the findings. So there was a lot of drilling done on the site to identify where the contamination is, what type of contamination we have, and how to deal with it. So those are the areas that we're familiar with on the upland. And one of the key findings was that by formalizing a road through the site, it would actually cover up a lot of the contamination. This year, we're doing a detailed risk assessment, which looks at the water lot. So they're looking at the sediment and the creatures that live there. And this is necessary in order to provide further subdivision. So you have to get approvals from the Ministry of Environment, have this cleared before you can do subdivision of water lots or the upland itself. And we'll come back in the fall with the results on this. One of the things we did last year was the demolition of Island Pallet, which was a bit of an eyesore at the time. We terminated the lease, and we demolished the building last winter, which cleaned the site up considerably. Earlier this year, we came to you with an MOU with C-SPAN and Southern Rail, and this was relating to the fact that we know that C-SPAN wishes to relocate in 2017 to Dew Point. So we have the right-of-way with C-SPAN, which is, again, 15.5 acres. A lot of it is on the upland, again, with the water lot. And the idea is to reduce it down to about 6 acres at the end, which would include a water lot area for their barges to come in, as well as an area for a transload facility. But it would actually open up the rest of this land for redevelopment and for the potential road. And there's the road going through there. Earlier this, just in July actually, we did the dock demolition of the former CP Ferry dock. And just some photos there of it coming out. It's now gone. And in this month, we did the archaeological impact assessment, which looked at, again, kind of like the environmental work. We did a series of drill holes to see where there might be archaeological remains. And we'll have that report in a few months, or in a month probably. The wooden truss, like I said, is one of the biggest issues we've been dealing with. We know it's about a $5 to $6 million price tag to replace it. We'd prefer not to, so we've had a structural engineer looked at it again this year, gave us a work plan to extend its life to 2018, and we've made those repairs. And as part of the properties in the area, the Nanaimo Port Authority owns this property that we call the Bowtie, which is between One Port Drive and the Gabriela Ferry Terminal. And we've included this in the master plan area, and we've had discussions with the NPA about how this property could be developed and if there's opportunities for land exchange, et cetera. And that kind of leads into, that's all the work we've done. And now we're hoping through the master plan process to kind of get some more detail on the property itself. And Bruce can talk about that.
Thanks. Your Worship, members of council. Just go to the next slide. So Bill had mentioned earlier the initiative that was undertaken. It did set out some guiding principles, an overall vision for a larger part of the waterfront than simply the site area that we have, but it is basically a vision that sets the tone, if you will, for the master plan for the waterfront. Principles that came out of there: promote access and connectivity to the neighborhood, city and region beyond, support evolving working harbor, promote ecologically positive development, provide a bold, resilient, and visionary land use for the South Downtown waterfront, and also embed cultural and social considerations in future decisions. So that was the principles that arose from the South Downtown Waterfront Initiative, and that would guide a master plan for this portion of the area. This we refer to as One Port Drive master plan area. This had been approved by council in the 2015 budget to do a plan for this area. And again, the key objective for the master plan is to provide a level of detail on proposed land use, transportation, servicing, open space, trails, environmental protection, as well as for phasing of development. So in terms of implementation, the plan will confirm locations of public amenities, including the waterfront walkway and public spaces, formalize the road network and address access through the site. We'll introduce a framework for utilities and servicing. The plan will also help to clarify how the site may directly or indirectly play a role in support of a transportation hub for this part of the city. The master plan will provide guidance on future parcel size and location, and it will also confirm acceptable land uses for the property, both in terms of short and long term, and include a market assessment of land use options for the South Downtown waterfront area. The master plan will establish policy in general terms regarding building height and density ranges, not unlike any other neighborhood area plan that the city undertakes. Provide certainty for the community stakeholders and developers with respect to the vision for this portion of the waterfront, and basically more of a refinement of the vision and principles you see in that initiative that was developed earlier. And the master plan should increase the value of property from an industrial brownfield to a vibrant mixed-use waterfront development. In terms of the general schedule, we bump up a little bit respecting the schedule. Basically, we go through what is a typical planning process to work our way through to presenting a draft plan for council's consideration. That master plan process will lead us to a place where we can look at zoning, infrastructure projects associated with the waterfront, and basically readying ourselves for that trestle issue to be addressed by 2018. So that, Your Worship, is the bulk of our presentation. Thank you.
Councillor Besser.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, fellas. A few questions. I'll just start with C-SPAN. What is C-SPAN's requirement for environmental identification and then subsequent cleanup, or is that to be negotiated, or is that us?
So with C-SPAN, they're responsible for any environmental conditions that they've impacted on the site since they purchased from CP, which is minimal. But they're responsible for removing all the improvements that they've purchased. So the dock demolition that we did this year, that's actually a credit towards what we will be compensating C-SPAN. And the main dock that you can see there, again, that's an improvement that they're responsible for removing. They want to keep it, so we're going to have to negotiate that piece.
Thank you. So going back to your answer, how is there records of what they inherited from CP? Like when you say what?
Well, they purchased the property in 1998. So it'd be hard. I think it'd be hard to indicate the
So
the
there's
main
no real
contamination.
records of what
The
they-
main contamination on the site is from the coal waste and from the fill, not from the storage of trucks on the site.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Second question, and it relates to C-SPAN. Upon their departure to be negotiated, for how much land does the city stand to benefit to develop on the C-SPAN site? So to add to our 20 acres, roughly.
Well, it'll be, they're retaining about 3.5 acres of land. And then we have the Island Corridor Foundation piece as well. Maybe if I,
They're about 8 or something,
yes,
or less, I don't know.
just have to sort of go back a bit here. We'll get there, sorry. Bear with me. So anything that's not colored is what comes back to us.
Anything that's not colored comes back to us.
Yeah. So it's quite a substantial part of the site. I think the next one I actually had some acreages put on. Yes, so 3.5 acres on the north. This is discounting the road, so the road's already taken out, and 4.25 on the south. And then there'd be another piece where the Gad Marine site is that I haven't measured for you.
Okay, so that takes us somewhere up to near 30 acres then.
No, the site doesn't get any bigger. The site is 26.7, including the 15.5 acre right away.
Okay, thank you. When we speak to the strategic plan, and we speak to water, on page 13, it talks about a continuous, uninterrupted, and accessible waterfront trail connection from Departure Bay Beach to Nanaimo River Estuary.
Yeah.
So, and not to go away from this site and project, because I think it's so key and so critical a piece for our future. But when we talk about a trail from Departure Bay to BC Ferries or wherever it hooks up at on Stewart Avenue, that seems to be almost a forgotten portion because we don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten about it. We do have a terms of reference for that piece, and we're hoping to get started on that soon. So that's a separate, it's already been budgeted. We have a terms of reference to go on that, which is to hire a consultant to look at how we're going to develop the walkway from Departure Bay through to the estuary, and do some public consultation on that, talk about a phasing plan, the short-term wins, longer-term projects. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Because I think that too is very important. And I think when we were back on council a few terms ago, we did, and maybe even before that, that was talked about quite a bit as a desirable. And then my last question, just the anchor driver for this site. And there's lots of nice bulleted statements, and there's all that stuff. What's driving this site as its anchor tenant? C.
I think that's what the master plan is going to tell us, because the public might say, we want this as a park. They might say we want to see a museum. They might say we want to see commercial development. And I think that's why we want to do this, because we need to know what the future parcel layout is going to be. We need to know where we're going to start putting things. And at the moment, we don't really have any direction as to what the site's to be used for.
So once we know we have a clean sheet, so to speak,
yep.
Canvas, then I suspect there could be a multitude of options. That's where we're going with this plan?
That's why we're doing it, yeah.
And that's where you said we're speeding up that, was that the speed up process, the $100,000 investment to get to that?
Yeah, I think it's so that we actually have an idea, because what's going to happen is when people like the Fast Ferries or other folks come to us and are looking for locations and they want a permanent spot, then that starts impacting the future decisions in the area. And so we like to know, like, if we're going to put the road network here, is this the right location? If we're going to put a public amenity here, is that the right location? Where should the transit exchange go? Should it be on the site? Should it be off the site? Where does it fit? Because once we dispose of that land, we're committed.
Your Worship,
Ted, which returns to my original question. What's the driver?
I was going to answer that as well, Your Worship, and I think that's a great question, because council has determined, in my opinion, what the primary tenant is in this property. When we purchased it, it was for a transit exchange and for an intermodal transit facility. And that's a good discussion to have, because we proceeded with preparing the property for island ferries, for a fast ferry to be on site. We're working with the regional district for a transit exchange. And of course, we have ICF that's looking to develop its facility in this location as well. So that to me is the primary tenet that we would have to consider as we move forward with any development plans, unless council changes its priorities, and then we would change the planning accordingly.
Thank you. May I follow that up? Is certainly not now at this table right now, but how would we go about having that conversation? Is that a motion? Like, do I need to make a motion that would ask for a council update on opportunities to revisit its original purchase and its intentions?
Well, Your Worship,
how do I go about that?
Your Worship, I think that, and I've talked to individual councillors recently about this, that council has a strategic plan that has strategic priorities that was due to expire at the end of this year. And we had anticipated that the timing of the core review would be as such that we would get to the strategic plan this year, but that won't happen. And I think that we shouldn't wait until the core review is done. I think we should start talking about our strategic priorities. And I would propose that we have a facilitated session to review some of the issues in the strategic plan, just to, one, give the consultant who's doing the core review some guidance, and secondly, that we can start rethinking how we're going to promote the hotel site or not promote the hotel site, deal with island ferries or not deal with island ferries, which are two of the priorities that council has currently. So amongst other priorities. And that's the sort of discussion I'd like to bring to the table, possibly at the governance review table, which is a good informal setting with a facilitator, and we can have a good strategic planning discussion. That would be my proposal.
Thank you. Might I be able to, so you don't need a motion, we can do that sometime between now and the end of October, middle of November?
Your Worship, I'd like to see that happen before Christmas, if not sooner.
Thank you. So I agree. I would agree.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to focus the discussion out, I'll make the motion that council adopt the terms of reference for the Port Drive Waterfront Master Plan.
Seconder? Thank you.
And if I could speak to it.
Go ahead.
The reason that I wanted to get that on the table is because I flipped over to the terms of reference, and I think that they are broad enough but specific enough to accommodate the kinds of discussion we're talking about here, that providing practical and implementable guidance to decision makers to promote ecological stewardship, blend land uses, to create future collaboration with the SFN. Those are the kinds of things in the purpose of the terms of reference would be. So I think that it accommodates that discussion rather than sets it aside for other discussions. And that's why I was anxious to make the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thanks. I don't disagree at all with Councillor Brennan's assessment of that. I just want to ensure that by virtue of having this facilitated session, by moving this forward, we don't circumvent the facilitation that allows us to be more flexible or adaptable, because 2 or 3 months from now, some sort of work gets started on advancing this terms of reference and its protocols. So I just want to make sure that we don't put the process in some sort of compromising scenario. It's actually working contiguously into the facilitation, and we may be able to be fluid and make adjustments at the facilitation or shortly thereafter. Is that, so I'm okay, thanks.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll certainly support the terms of reference. I think this is such an exciting opportunity for our city, and I want to see this move ahead and done properly and carefully. And I fully support also Mr. Swaby's suggested facilitated discussion about where we're heading with this piece of property. But I see nothing that I cannot support in the current suggested terms of reference, so I would support that.
Thank you. Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Through you to staff. When we do this master plan, this isn't going to commit us to put like a transit hub there if we feel that it doesn't belong there, does it?
Well, Your Worship, you already have committed to a transit hub there. So it would take a motion to uncommit yourself to that.
That was a letter of understanding that we have with...
We have an MOU on council's direction with the regional district. We purchased the land for that purpose. That doesn't mean we can't negotiate other areas for it off, depending on the size that they ultimately need, but that's currently where we're at, that's council's direction.
Okay, because it wouldn't make sense if, say that the Island Ferries doesn't happen and ICF doesn't happen. Understanding as it's a transit hub would be great. I'm just foreseeing the future because this isn't, a short-term plan by any means.
Well, there's been, Councillor Hong, and I should dig them up for council just to reacquaint you with the studies that have been done for the transit exchange location, because it has been a long process to determine where the site would be in the downtown, the permanent site. And I'm just telling you where we're at and where council's direction is, and certainly you can move your direction, but I think that needs to be done carefully with the regional district.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick, do you have anything new to add? Or shall we call the question?
Yeah. This is totally... Sure.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, 6B. That council reconsider rezoning application 34...
It's off the table, isn't it?
What? No? No.
Isn't 6B gone?
6B is gone. It's been replaced by this.
Oh.
That was the late item that I brought forward.
Oh.
Okay. Reconsider rezoning application 348 for 306 Hillcrest, 525 3rd, 305, 311, and 321 Watfield, and direct staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw for consideration of first and second reading at council's meeting of September 14th, 2015. I just wanted to preface this with two reasons for asking for this. One is that both Councillor Pratt and myself were away for the public hearing and the reading at third reading, and would like to participate in the discussion. Second, I've been advised by the developer that, notwithstanding the fact that he gave a tremendous amount of information that really wasn't necessary at the rezoning stage, it did highlight that there are folks that had some concerns about it, and he would like, between now and September 14th, start discussions with the neighbors to consider making changes to it. That being said, it would be difficult to do a reconsideration at third reading tonight, so senior staff and ledge services had advised me that the only way that this should really come back, to be fair to all parties involved, including the opportunity to take it back to public hearing, would be to bring it back at first and second reading. Does that pretty much capture it, Mr. Jackson? Thank you. Thank you. So I put that forward. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I'm not clear on how this could be a reconsideration at third reading tonight.
Go ahead.
So the motion that the mayor is putting forward is not a reconsideration of the bylaw itself. It would be instructing staff to bring back a new bylaw that would be available on September 14th for first and second reading, and then it would go back to public hearing with the changes as the proponent has put forward.
I'm really struggling because I haven't had an opportunity to pay a whole lot of attention to this project since we voted. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around what the arguments were, or what the debates were, or even what next steps are. But certainly we wouldn't be dealing with this at a third reading tonight.
No.
When it didn't get passed, when it failed. So what you're asking us to do by virtue of this motion is to re-vote from the last meeting without those same members of the public that were here in attendance to understand what just happened.
In actual fact, it's taking it back further than that. If we were going to reconsider third reading tonight, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what would happen. The public wouldn't be present here to witness that. So that's why it was recommended that we take it back to first and second, so that the public has another opportunity to speak at public hearing.
Okay, not to argue, but we're not here to reconsider a vote for third reading tonight. It's not on the agenda.
That was the item that I put forward, was to reconsider, not third reading, but to reconsider rezoning application 348.
Okay, so for me, I don't have the information in front of me, regrettably. So I don't have enough information right now to be able to say, yes, let's reconsider that and vote on it, so that the applicant can go out and get neighborhood approvals or information, or tell them what he's going to change now that he didn't submit before. Like, should we not have that? Like, wouldn't we normally have that? It's a question to staff. Would we normally know that? Like last time when we voted?
Your Worship, in response to Councillor Bestwick's question, what I would say is, if the motion passes tonight, this is essentially a reset button. You're starting the application back at first and second reading. So there would be an amendment bylaw that would come forward at your meeting in September. If that bylaw was successful in getting first and second reading, it would then come to a public hearing for you to hear again from the proponent and from any concerned parties. And then following that, it would come back to council for a consideration of third reading. So it's essentially taking us right back to the very start of this process. So there'll be opportunity for input and for information a couple times, both in September and at the public hearing.
And that notice would be made available to whatever that capture area is?
That is,
and with enough time?
That is correct, Your Worship. We feel if we get to the September 1st and 2nd, we would still have time to do the required notification for an October public hearing. So we would go back through the same requirements: newspaper, on-site signage, hand delivery to the neighboring residents. So anyone who came out last time would have the opportunity to come again and present to council.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan.
So, with regard to the procedure here, the process, if a councillor asks something to be reconsidered, we vote on the question of reconsideration first, and then we vote on the motion. Is that the same process, or does the mayor have an extra authority here?
No, not in this case. In this case, it's not a reconsideration of third reading. And
Okay.
You're right, it would be first whether you want to reconsider, and then you would actually reconsider. In this case, it's reconsideration of the application itself. So the motion tonight is not reconsideration. It's, do you want to go back to first reading with a new bylaw presented on September the 14th?
So is the motion on the floor? Was there a seconder?
There was no
I'm not
seconder.
sure. Okay. Then I would like to speak to it.
Please.
Okay, thank you. You know what? I remember Jerry had to jog my memory about where this was, but I remember it, and the community was really concerned and felt they had all sorts of reasons why they didn't want this to happen. And my reason for turning it down was not necessarily the same as the community's reasons for not wanting it. I thought that there were some good things. I thought that the density may have been too high, but that it's a good idea to densify along those roads. But I was left with the overwhelming feeling that the community had not had the opportunity to express their concerns to the developer, that the developer had not taken enough time to go to the community, provide them with opportunities to express what they wanted to see happen there. So I would hesitate at this point, just a few weeks after we turned it down, to bring it back and say to the community, oh, okay, well, we're going to give you another couple of weeks or 4 weeks even to consider this. At the time, I didn't think that enough time had been given, and I don't think that 4 additional weeks is enough time for the community to communicate with the developer and express what they want to see, and have the developer do some changing to that plan to accommodate the community's vision around that. So I can't support it. Can't support reconsideration.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I voted against this when it was before us originally, and my fear when you made your request was that we would be asked to reconsider tonight, which I would not be prepared to do. I'm hearing something different from Mr. Jackson and Mr. Lindsay, which tells me we would be totally backing up and starting again. I'd be inclined to support that if we feel that the neighborhood would be prepared to have their say, if the developer was going to be in conversation with the neighbors and have a slightly different proposal that they might respond to. So that being the case, I think I would be prepared to support a reconsideration.
Mr. Swaby.
So, Your Worship, I think I'm understanding the proposal, and I just wanted to comment that maybe to bring some clarity to this. Council has a policy that if a rezoning application is defeated, that the applicant can't reapply for 6 months with the same application. So in essence, I think what would achieve your goals is just to make a motion to waive that policy in regard to this application and let the applicant reapply, and he would go through the process again from the beginning. So that's essentially what you're doing, is just waiving the policy that you have, the procedures bylaw. It does set a precedent, I would suggest, that you might want to consider, but there must be compelling reasons why certain councillors would like this reconsidered, and that's up to council, of course.
So the other thing that I'm concerned about where the discussion is going is with respect to third reading immediately following a public hearing. We brought that in to try to speed up the process 2.5, 3 years ago, and council agreed that if any member of council needed more time or more information, that we would give them that. In this particular case, basically all I'm asking for is that both Councillor Pratt and myself were absent from the conversation, and we'd like to be included in it. That's why this is the only way that we can go forward with, that we can go back to that item, because I would certainly like to be included in that conversation. Councillor Pratt.
The way we're talking about this is a little confusing, but I do believe that the whole object of this is to, as the mayor said earlier, go back to the beginning and start this process again. And however we can successfully do that, I would certainly support doing that, whether it is by waiving the 6-month waiting period, or I mean, that sounds like a good option to me, or just agreeing that we will, I guess we can't just agree to go back to the beginning without waiving that consideration. Is that correct, Mr. Swaby?
Your Worship, the impact is the same. I think the message is different. And I think that the consideration for council having a 6-month moratorium on reapplying is because the neighborhood would be confused and would be angry if in fact there was a large turnout against the application. So it allows some breathing room. So the optics of waiving your policy but allowing the applicant to apply would politically probably be a better option, with maybe some direction in your waiving of the 6-month policy to direct the applicant to go out and do community consultation before they apply, as another way of showing the neighborhood that you're interested in the applicant addressing the concerns that were raised at the public hearing. I wasn't there, I don't know what they were, but that's another suggestion I would have for you. So it's more of the optics. Otherwise, council's just saying, go back to the beginning, waive the fees, don't go to the Advisory Planning Commission, don't put up the sign that goes up with, right at the beginning of the process, just jump right to the public hearing. Might not be perceived in the same way by the neighborhood. That's how I would suggest.
Thank you.
Councillor Hong.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I have the same concerns that Councillor Brannan had. Was the community didn't feel like they actually had enough time to talk to the developer and make the changes to satisfy what the neighborhood would like to see in that area. I don't know if the developer is even capable of making changes fast enough for, is it October public hearing that they're trying to shoot for then? Because that just seems like a little fast. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing this in December. It kind of gives more time. You know, I don't know how about that happens, but I think what Councillor Brannan says is in cooling off periods, as Mr. Swaby said, to get more time for the neighborhoods, and it gives more time for the developers to address the concerns that the neighborhood had, and go back to the neighborhood and discuss it with them, so they have a better understanding of what the project's going to be that would satisfy both parties. So I think it's, I don't know, whatever optically looks the best, but it seems like October is a little too fast to come back for a public hearing. So I don't know where to go with that, but I don't mind having the project come back, but just coming back in October, it just seems a little fast and not doing due justice for the community to get the proper input, and for the developer not to rush anything forward without listening to the concerns of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
Brannan. Generally speaking, I would say that if you're going to waive your policy, you need to have some pretty compelling reasons to do so. And because councillors, sort of have lives that take them away on vacation or to courses or to wherever, not being at a meeting, I think, doesn't meet the bar of compelling. But I understand the comments from the city manager that we could, you could waive it and go through all the other procedures within that 6-month period. So, they could go back to the design advisory panel. They could hold adequate hearings with the neighborhood, give the neighborhood adequate time. But October's too early, and December or the new year, I could understand that. But to do it as a reconsideration, I think, is not the best plan. I think the developer needs to go back and do his homework with the neighborhood. So I could see myself agreeing to waiving the 6-month, maybe even putting a different time period in, but I can't see agreeing to a reconsideration.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, I think if the developer thinks this is a great development now, then he will think it'll be a great development in 6 months. And 6 months will give a lot of time that he can approach the community ahead of time. It gives him all of that. If we set a precedent right now and change that, others will want that same benefit. And I'm not willing to make that, to set that precedent right now, so I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with Councillor Fuller's sentiments. I think it's a dangerous precedent, and I would not be in favor of waiving the 6-month period. I'd be very happy to look at this proposal again in 6 months and start the process over again, but I will not support waiving that. Thank you.
Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. Question to Mr. Swaby. Did you indicate that if the applicant comes back with significantly changed application, that he doesn't need to wait 6 months in which to do so? Sorry, did I misunderstand that?
Your Worship, I'll let Mr. Lindsay, he knows the bylaw better than I do, but I believe it, I recall it to say if it's significantly different, but it is a bylaw, so how is the wording?
Your Worship, the bylaw just simply reads that where an application has been refused by council, no subsequent application for the same amendment or permit may be submitted for a period of 6 months. So we tend to look at each application on its own merits and judge whether, in our opinion, a substantive change has been made to that application that would allow them to proceed. Ultimately, when we bring forward the application, council could determine whether or not they believe it's a substantive change from the original proposal.
Then it would be wise for this developer applicant to go out and do his community thing, and whatever changes that he's suggesting to them to secure their favor would probably be a wise thing for him to do, and then come back to you. I just find it a precedent that I'd wish not to set. If it was a notice of motion and I had a little bit more time to do, then I would have a better opportunity to revisit it. But at this point in time, I won't be able to support. Won't be able to support the motion.
Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. I defer to my colleagues. I have been listening to the discussion, and I believe that you're correct. It isn't a precedent we want to be setting, and I am more than happy to leave that the 6 months and do it in the way that other developers would have to do it without changing anything. So thank you for your input.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Let the record show that, can we have the hands up, please? That all but Mayor McKay have opposed. Thank you. Thank you. Next item. Nanaimo Community Garden Society, approval of lease agreement. To obtain council's approval to issue a 10-year lease to the Nanaimo Community Garden Society for a parcel of land at Bevan Park for a greenhouse growing program.
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Yes.
All in favor?
Seeing no speakers, all in favor, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, bylaws with no.
Did we do both, 1 and 2?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Bylaws with no company report. Motion that Financial Plan Amendment Bylaw 2015, number 7206.01, be adopted. So moved. Seconded. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Are we adjourning and then returning?
Yes, I think we should be 10 minutes. Okay.
Do you need a motion?
Yes, please.
I would move that we adjourn for 10 minutes and reconvene at 6:05.
About 6:10.
We're reconvening at 6:10.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could reconvene the meeting, please. So the first item tonight is the Colliery Dams Auxiliary Spillway Contractor Award. But before we get started, I need to make an announcement concerning decorum in the gallery. At tonight's meeting, we have to understand that decorum in the gallery is based on what its intended purpose is. The intended purpose of the gallery is for people, for citizens to witness the business of council. It is not a place of protest. So I have to advise you of Section 133 of the Community Charter, which states, if the person presiding at a council meeting considers that another person at the meeting is acting improperly, and I'll emphasize, acting improperly, the person presiding may order that person is expelled from the meeting. Part 2 says if a person who is expelled does not leave the meeting, a peace officer may enforce the order under subsection 1 as if it were a court order. I notice a number of you have brought signs tonight, and I will tell you that by raising your signs and displaying your signs, that you are, in my view, as the person presiding at the meeting, acting improperly, based on the intended purpose of the gallery. So I'm not going to communicate with the gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, we will adjourn this meeting if necessary. If we cannot get order in the gallery, we will adjourn the meeting.
Just let him talk. It's too soon. Be calm. Be calm. Let the man speak.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I need to tell you that if you present signs or you do anything other than observe the meeting, that I will ask that you leave the meeting. So, first item, the lady behind Mr. Boland. Can you please put your sign down?
Excuse me.
Councillor Fuller.
Section 132(2) states that on appeal by a council member from a decision of the presiding member under subsection 1, which I'm assuming would be you, the question as to whether the chair is to be sustained must be immediately put by the presiding member and decided without debate. So I would like to actually appeal what you are stating and allow them to keep their signs, allow them to maintain good behavior, and allow them to attend this meeting to see council's procedures.
So, Councillor Fuller, Section 132 of the Charter in this case does not apply. We're talking about Section 133.
And I'm
There's
talking
no
about
challenge.
Section 132. Yes, there is. That is the challenge.
There is no challenge. So, there is no debate because Section 132 does not apply. So, under Section 133, the lady behind Mr. Boland, can you put your sign down, please? On the floor.
Point of order. This is really
Yeah,
provocative.
point of order.
This is provocative. This is provocative, Your Worship. It started out quietly every time until you provocate by your one rule. It's really disappointing. I think it is challengeable. What is Mr. Or whatever? Do we have we don't council have a legal opinion, or is this the corporate legal opinion? What do we have?
I have sought legal opinion, and legal opinion, and my legal advice. My legal
privileged to that opinion?
Councillor Fuller or Councillor.
Point of
Ladies
order.
and gentlemen, if there's any more outbursts, we will adjourn this meeting. We can, ladies and gentlemen, we also have the ability to clear the gallery.
Give it a shot.
The presiding member has the ability under section 133 that any person that she considers at the meeting is acting improperly, that he can have that person removed from the meeting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I will have to ask that the gallery be emptied if this continues. So, if we cannot have any further outbursts from the gallery, I will ask that the gallery be emptied.
What about those members that are in the gallery that aren't here for the Colliery Dam thing? What about them? Are we going to kick them out too?
If those people are prepared to observe the business of this council, then they can remain.
And so the business of this council is not affected by signs and people in the gallery. I like seeing lots of people in the gallery. It shows interest in the community process. So I would say if they're willing to sit there, let them have their signs and everything, and we can get on with this. Let's get the night over.
Councillor Fuller, this is not up for debate. This is not up for debate. It's under section 133 of the community charter. It says that the chair has the right and has the obligation to ensure that people in the gallery act properly.
And as I said, how many people in the gallery are not here for the colliery thing? Now, if they all raise their hands and say they're not here for the colliery thing, if everybody in the gallery does that, how do you tell who is
okay? So
who
the first thing we will do. The first thing we will do.
Well, you could ask. You could have me removed also. Yeah.
It'll come to that.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, if we cannot have quiet in the gallery, then we will adjourn the meeting. And we will reconvene the meeting after the gallery has been emptied. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
This meeting will reconvene once the gallery has been cleared.
Oh, I heard meeting was adjourned.
This meeting will reconvene once the gallery has been emptied. Thank you.
I'm out of here.